Welcome, everybody, to the July 8th and 9th, 2024 Board of Commissioners budget hearings. Please silence your cell phones and pagers and other electronic communication devices. Agendas are located at the back of the chambers. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order, and I'd ask Commissioner Ron Roskinek to do the moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next on our agenda is the review and approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Roskinek, seconded by Hadcock. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, what we're going to do is start the fiscal year 2025 Pennington County budget hearings. The first on the slate is the State of Employment presentation from HR Director Carol Bancroft, followed by the fiscal 2025 provisional budget presentation by Cindy Muller. Carol.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Carol Bancroft, Pennington County HR Director. I want to thank you very much for allowing us to share with you as far as the state of employment to kick off the budget hearings. So as far as the state of the employment, that the table of contents, that we're going to take a look at our own staff turnover, the historical data. We'll look at the CPI and average wage increases at a national level and then down to the micro level as far as Pennington County. We're also going to look at the health and dental insurance and then also the benefits comparative survey that we did, and then a survey from our employees with the voice of our employees. And then we'll look at staffing trends as well as population trends, and then do a 3 to 5 year outlook. And lastly, we'll migrate into the wage study. So as far as staff turnover, the historical information, it starts with 2019 through the 2024, and these are all first quarter trends. So you can see as far as in 2019, we were at 21%, and in 2020, it dropped down to 19%, which that was in the first quarter, and that was where we were starting to see the impact of the pandemic. And then, of course, in 2021 and 2022, it really peaked. And 2023, we started to see that downward trend. And I'm pleased to say that in first quarter of 2024, that we're down to 15%. And I think, in my opinion, that some of the things that are contributing to that is that we've learned so much through the pandemic as far as what the labor force, what they're looking for in employment. And so having the flexible schedules, the 4-day work weeks for the admin part of our business, as well as hybrid, where there are some people that are working remote some days and then in the office other days. There's also, thanks to the commissioners, been a tremendous shift in some of our policies, that we have the facilities closure policy, and you'll see in the voice of our employees that these are things that are very favorable to them. We also did change as far as vacation and how that could be earned. So those are definitely some of the contributing factors, along with that a very concerted effort for training for our employees, and then also some of the employee different perks like the picnic that we just had, as well as Christmas party, et cetera. So really emphasizing what that employee value proposition is. So the CPI and average wage increases, that when you look at the consumer price index, which is the top block, that we're looking at the national, and it works from 2024 down to 2022, that the national consumer price index is at 3.3 when this data was pulled. And so that compares to in 2023 of 4.1, and of course that significant factor in 2022 of 8%. So the Midwest compares to that of a CPI in 2024 currently of 2.8. And then if you look at Pennington County, it's at 2.7. So both in the Midwest and Pennington County, we're doing considerably better. As far as employment cost index, which that includes salaries and wages, and these are in percentages, that in the private industry, our private sector, that is 4.3% is what the COLA has been, or cost of living allowance in 2024, and state and local government is averaging 5%. And so that compares in 2023 and 2022 that you can see it, again, it's a downward trend for private industry or staying static with 2023, but state and local government is actually on the increase. I think it's also important to look at other government salary structure increases. So this is information in 2024 from our comparable organizations that Lincoln County is between 3 to 7%, and where they were at in 2023 was 7.5. In 2022, they were at 12.5 to 13.25. And then in Minnehaha County, it was across the board at 5% in 2024 and 2023. And in 2022, it was 3 to 7%. The state in 2024 is 7%. And then in 2023, it was 6%. In 2022, there was 2.4%. So as far as, I'm going to drag this out of the way here. That Pennington County, that when you look at our new wage scale, what we're proposing is 1.5%, because we know we're working with limited dollars. And so with the new wage scale and repositioning people onto that wage scale, that 1.5% is what we're recommending. As opposed to in 2023, it was 4%, and 2022 was 1.5%. So the CPI and wage adjustments, and this is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, that in 2022 is the dark blue or purplish colored, the first bar. And for the national, it was 8%. In 2023, it was 4.1%, and 2024 at 3.3%. The Midwest mirrored that within 2022, and we were lower in 2023 and 2024. The South Dakota State Minimum Wage Adjustment, which I think is important to look at as well, that it was 5.3% in 2022. In 2023, it was 8.54%, and then in 2024, it was a 3.7% increase. And so you'll also see in private industry and the private sector that in 2022 it was 5.1%, and in 2023 it was 4.3%, as well as in 2024. So when you look at state and local government, again, the average from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that they show that it was 4.7% for both 2022 and 2023, and 5% for 2024. So some good comparison points. When we look at our health and dental insurance, here's a historical look as far as what our revenues were. So in the first column, it starts with the year 2014 down through 2024. And then the next column is our revenues as far as what we were able to get with the premiums, as well as any of the reimbursements from Wellmark. And so you'll see our expenditures and then what our net gain and loss was. And so what was our year-end fund balance. And I think it's significant to understand that in 2014 is where we started to see a downward trend as far as what we were able to have as net gain and loss. It was some puts and takes through the year of 2018, and then we really felt the full impact in 2019. And what happened during that time is there were no increases to premiums. And so there was a lagging factor here, but it definitely caught us in 2019, and we've been trying to regroup since then. We've also had some catastrophic claims within our health insurance, and so that has contributed. Like in 2022, you'll see that the net loss was $1,267,351. So there's been some things that we have done as a board to try to regroup and get our reserve where it needs to be. And so in July of 2023, that we did increase 4%, or 3%, excuse me, and then in January of 2024, there was a 3% increase. So the board has also determined that in January of 2025, there'll be a 4% increase, and in April, that they will evaluate as far as whether we need to make that July increase of 4%, but that is what is on the table at this point in time. So there's been some other things that have happened as far as the stop loss premiums, that we have been able to reduce those because we changed the stop loss factor from 90% to 125,000, or 90,000 to 125,000. So there are other things that the board is doing in order to try to hold those costs down. But in 2025, you'll see when we do that budget presentation that it's $9,953,000, and that's an overall 6% increase from 2024. That is lower than the 7% that was included in the 2024 year budget. And there have been years in which it was an 8% increase. So I think we're really trying to hold as best as we can. So one of the things that we did learn here most recently is that our representative from Wellmark let us know that medical costs, the trend is that it's close to 10% increase that's going on in medical costs. So that is a driving factor as well. This is some information that was requested by the commissioners to do a comparative study. So this is a breakdown as far as, and it's a lot of data to look at, but it's color-coded. Hopefully that helps. But if you're looking at the first box under the PPO plan, that the monthly costs are broken down by whether it's a plan for employee only, employee and spouse, employee and one child, or employee and children, or employee and family. These are the various types of plans that exist with our comparable data. And so you'll see in the first yellow block, that is the city of Rapid City. And as you work down in that block, you'll see what the total cost is for that premium. And then the next line is what and it should say city pays, and then what does the employee pay. And then if you work across in that yellow block, that you'll see the high deductible plans on a monthly basis. That again, it has the employee only, employee and spouse, employee and one child, etc. And it shows what the breakdown is then for the city and employee. The next block is Custer County, and then also Larimer County in Colorado, Lawrence County, Lincoln County, and of course Pennington County and Sarpy County. We did request information from a number of other counties, but these were the only ones that responded to our request. So when you do a comparison and you look at where Pennington County is, that you'll see that we're not the highest, we're not the lowest, we're kind of in the middle, which is really a good position for us to be in, because we've always said that Pennington County is not in a position financially to be the absolute best, but we certainly don't want to be the lowest either. So looking at the employee survey results that we had 351 who answered the responses. And as you're looking at this, that are you satisfied with the compensation you receive for the work performed? So we have 4% that are very satisfied and 27% that are satisfied, or that equates to 31% are saying, yes, I'm good with that. If you add in the somewhat satisfied of 28%, that gives you 59% of the respondents are satisfied with the compensation. But I take that with a grain of salt because that somewhat satisfied is telling me that there's room for improvement. So we had 25% that are somewhat dissatisfied and 16% that are dissatisfied. So as far as our healthcare, here's some of the things that I pulled excerpts of what the employees were telling us, that they also have dental and vision, and the plan covers our medical needs and allows us an excellent choice of providers. I do not think our premiums are out of line for the level of coverage we carry. I'm pleased with the coverage given what we pay. That all the way down to about midpoint, that it is pretty good coverage. Wish you would quit raising deductibles and out-of-pocket costs. And then I'm going to skip over and go to the second one after that. It's getting more expensive for the amount I pay per month and also the amount I keep having to pay out of pocket. I used to never have to pay for anything out of pocket. Now if I go to urgent care, it's a $300 bill. So it is true, our employees do range from that. They understand it's probably a pretty good deal for them, but we also have those that it's very difficult for them, and it's painful as those premium increases happen and the cost of medical care is going up. So we also asked as far as what do you like about the changes made in 2023 through 2024 to the vacation, sick leave, and facilities closure leave policies. Here's a real win for commissioners. Pat yourselves on the back. I think it's a great way to retain employees, which is exactly what we were striving for. And I think it was a great choice to help with longevity and show the county cares about retention and making the workplace a better environment for everyone. I'll skip down a couple. I like the increase in vacation. I do wish the sick vacation were just rolled into one PTO to use. There'd be a lot less last-minute absences that affects everyone when you are short-staffed. And then lastly, I am glad to have vacation, sick leave, and facility closure leave. However, I think the longer you work for the county, the more the county should be investing in you. Taking away accrued vacation and sick leave or capping it to a certain number is not the answer. What you accrue should never have been capped to a certain number. It should be you get what you earn. So a wide variety as far as sentiments. So the next question, how satisfied are you with your current role and responsibilities? This is really great to see that 91% of the respondents are satisfied with their role and responsibilities. And that does include the somewhat satisfied within that number. If you strip that back out, it's 68% are saying they're very satisfied and satisfied. And it's a very small number, somewhat dissatisfied, there's 8%, and dissatisfied 2%. So that 10% is where we have some work to do as well as with the 23%. Do you feel that the county culture aligns with your personal values? That we had 79% of the respondents feel that the county culture aligns with their personal values, which is exactly what we should be striving for. We had 27% that were neutral and then 4% that are not at all. How satisfied are you with the work-life balance provided by the county? That 87% of the respondents are satisfied, and that does include the 23% that are somewhat satisfied in that number. So somewhat dissatisfied is 7% and dissatisfied was 6%. How likely are you to recommend Pennington County as a place to work to family or friends? That with no hesitation, 50% of our employees say that they would. 32% say that frequently that they do, so that's a total of 82% of respondents would recommend Pennington County as a place to work. 13% were hesitant and 5% not at all. The staffing trend that I think this is also very important to see as far as the growth that we've experienced as a county, that the population growth is driving also the employee growth. So if you look at just the last couple years, between 2022 and 2023, that there was 20 approximately additional FTE. And then in between 2023 and 2024, it's close to 30. But if you look back all the way to 2016, we were at 696 employees, and it's been a steady increase since then. So that trend actually follows the county's population growth, that in 2016, the Pennington County population was at 109,240. In 2022, so 6 years later, it was at 114,461. That's an increase of 5,221, or 4.8%, which compares to the U.S. population growth of 3.2%. And then this year, in 2024, we're at 117,500 is estimated. And then we're projected in 2025 to be at 119,097. So if you look at between 2022 and 2025, that's approximately 4,500 more people that we are growing within the county. So the 3 to 5 year outlook and beyond, that again, this is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Very interesting data. I think we're all pretty aware of this, but it's really good to see it in graph form. That the slowdown in the labor force, if you look at what the population in the blue line in each of those years, so it's in 10-year increments, and then as far as what the labor force was. So there's definitely, as you get to 2022 and projected out to 2032, that the slowdown in the labor force growth is driven by two demographic trends. There's a lower population growth and an aging of the U.S. population. The labor force grew by 0.6% annually from 2012 to 2022, so in that 10-year span. And that's much slower than in the 1980s and 1990s when you compare those data points where growth exceeded 1%, and then in the 1960s and 1970s, growth exceeded 2%. So through 2032, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is projecting that the labor force to grow at 0.4% annually as the aging of the population accelerates. So the challenges with the labor force are going to continue, even though we're starting to see that we're getting more applications, but we're teetering on that as far as what that labor force, how many people are actually in it when you do the 3 to 5 year outlook. So the next thing that we wanted to share with you is the 2025 wage study project. And this wage study, that the presentation is going to highlight for you that we are in a new era of compensation. Some of the key factors, as we've talked about, that are influencing this shift are the post-pandemic and the evolution of growth in our county, as well as that's resulting in ever-present pressures on the labor markets and wages. So this presentation demonstrates you have the best combination of talent, skills, and attitude working on the wage study project. This team has been an outstanding group of leaders and employees to collaborate with, one of the best I've ever had the opportunity to. I'm pleased to say, Commissioners, that with your support and participation in the working sessions, that this group of individuals' hard work and dedication has paid off. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you that have been involved in the wage study for giving us your precious time and skills, as well as those leaders and employees that have driven the success for Pennington County and our employees. So within the content of this presentation, you're going to learn about 8 key factors, and I'll pull that up here so that you can see it. There we go. Slowly but surely. So there's going to be 8 key factors that they're going to share with you, and that's the guidance from the board, the steps in the process following that guidance, the communications that have been made, and the 5 different pay bands corresponding with the wage scales, and then the placement of employees on the new proposed wage scale, and the position highlights, as well as budget hearing strategy. So before I turn it over to our presenters, I want to leave you with this thought, is that fair pay isn't just about numbers. It's about respecting the value and contributions of every single county employee, and that's exactly what we were striving to achieve with the new wage scale. So with that, I'm very honored to introduce our presenters today, and that is Joe Miller and Brian Mueller.
Thank you, Carol.
Good afternoon. Feels like morning to me still. Brian Mueller, Pennington County Sheriff.
Joe Miller, Pennington County Highway Superintendent.
All right. What you're going to get today from us, and we're going to try to be brief because you've got a lot of information to get through between now and bedtime, so is going to be an overview. All of you have seen this information before. There's not going to be a lot of new information in here, but we thought it was important that we start off with this process. Each of the department heads and elected officials have this already built into their budgets. You're going to see that. You're going to get an opportunity to ask a lot of questions, but we just thought we'd just go through the journey as to where we started and where we're at today, and be able to answer any questions that you might have. So as all of you are aware, this journey started for us about 17 months ago when the commission asked us to undertake this process of doing an internal wage study. And I've had the opportunity, this is my 29th year at the office, to be a part of a lot of different wage studies. And I tell you, I feel personally like what we've come up with is not perfect, but it's very good. It doesn't accomplish everything that we need to accomplish, but it definitely puts us in the right foot, in the right direction to be where we need to be as a county. These are the board guidance that you gave us from the start of this process, the things that we've accomplished with our subcommittees. We evaluated over 224 positions, created an updated position descriptions, developed 5 pay bands that Joe's going to talk about in a little bit. We created a scoring matrix and scoring factors. We conducted comparable entity wage study. We conducted market analysis of the labor market using Lightcast. We created a wage scale for each pay band, and we placed employees on the new proposed wage scales that you're going to see with each individual department budget that's presented in the next couple of days. And then through the process, we audited each step. Communication, as we started off with this, we started with a public meeting at the commission meetings on January of 2023, August of 2023, an update in November of 23, and then another update in March of 24. And then we held individual working sessions with all of the commissioners that were able to attend, one in March, one in May, and one in June. And I thought that those were very instrumental in helping us answer questions and make sure that we had the right details for you to present here today. The comparable entities that we used for the wage study are listed here. There were other unique entities that we compared that you can ask questions about and that you'll hear about in department presentations. And I'll let Joe talk about the pay bands.
With that, one of the downfalls of the previous couple wage studies that we found is you tried to take and shoehorn the entire county into one box, right? So what my department does is very different than what Sheriff Mueller's does, and what is very different than what, say, the county auditor and the treasurer's office does. So with the help of Carol and HR, we created 5 different pay bands to kind of showcase that, right? Your professional bands and I'll get into what kind of falls into
each band here in a little bit. You have the professional band, you have the technical band, the support band, the public band, safety band, and the medical band. A key note here is that the current highway scale will go away. We'll integrate right back into the current or the new wage scale, so there won't be a highway wage scale. Without what it allowed us to do is really take a look and score each of the positions uniquely. The professional bands, we scored those differently than we did the technical band because they all do different things. Gallagher, it was a decision-based matrix. If you didn't make decisions, you didn't score well. And I'll highlight that in my budget presentation tomorrow afternoon, where our highway guys didn't necessarily score very well. With that, I'll go into the professional wage scale here. Some of the position examples: department heads, office managers, accountants, attorneys. You can see the different pay bands there, the min, the base starting, the mid, and then the max. So when we built these, the wage scales, they were all based off the midpoint. We gathered the midpoint data from the comparable entities that Brian just went through. We created a spreadsheet basically and had all that data in there. Once we did the data analysis is how we came up with the midpoint, and we created the wage scales from there. Once we figured out what the midpoint was, and then we figured out how many steps we wanted, there's 27 steps on each of these scales, which accounts for about a 1.54% separation between each step, which gets you to the 27 steps. The technical wage scale here, some examples are the highway workers, the custodians, mechanics, HVAC technicians, all fall within this technical wage scale. Again, same process. You have 27 steps, the mid, and the max. The support wage scale, some position examples: administrative specialist, legal secretary, real estate specialist, and tax and title assistant. The public safety wage scale, some position examples: the correction officer 1, dispatcher 3, deputy sheriff 2, detox supervisor. And then on the medical wage scale, you have the nurse practitioner, a registered nurse, the EMT, and the paramedic.
So once we developed the wage scale, we had to have a starting point. So what we decided to do was give each employee in Pennington County a 1.5% cost of living, and then place them on their new wage scale to the nearest point where they did not lose money. So no county employees through this transition will lose money. So that was the initial starting point. We had a lot of different positions that we realized were way out of whack comparatively with our competitors, and we just listed a few here. I'm going to go over the public safety, several of the public safety positions later this afternoon when I do my budget presentation, and I would assume the other elected officials and department heads will do the same with theirs. But we did have several that were $1, $2, $3 an hour behind their competitors, and we'll do a good job hopefully going through the budget presentations of highlighting those areas so you can ask any questions of each of us individually. Implementation costs, and this will be included in Cindy's numbers and again in each of our presentations that we're doing. The original cost is about $3.6 million. The revenue offset is about $1.3 million. So final cost of implementation is going to be about $2.2 million as it currently sits today and tomorrow in the hearings that you're going to listen to.
I'll ask you a question, Chair.
Ms. Hadcock.
Did you include all the benefits, retirement, all those things that are included in the 2.2 of your changes?
Yes, those are all included. So your retirement, your health care. What we did is we created a master spreadsheet essentially that has all 900 and some employees, and it has all their health care and all their
Any costs associated with each employee?
basically this is employment cost. And I'd like to point that out. I mean, this number is different than what you've used to seeing with either Condrey or Gallagher, right? I don't think anybody really knows where the Condrey and the Gallagher number for implementation costs came from. This cost is actual numbers from 2024 budgeted to 2025 budgeted. And this is not what Gallagher gave you. So if I remember correctly, the last couple of years, it was, what was it for 22 and 23? You remember what the numbers were off the top of your head, Brian?
2.7 million, I think, last year. I can't remember what the year before was.
Yeah, so we're right in line with the difference in labor force or labor costs from 24 to 25, from either 23 to 24 or 22 to 23. So like I said, we don't know where exactly the 900,000 came from when Condrey gave you that number, or the 500,000 when Gallagher gave you that number. This is actual cost with everything wrapped up into it.
To be fair, we didn't follow through with all the stuff by that time in order to come up with an actual for benefits and others. I remember on the Gallagher for sure, Condrey was already set before I got here, but to be fair to Gallagher, we didn't have all the costs from the department heads either for benefits or anything. So John was trying to figure that out, but the changes that kept happening made that not occur. So that's why those totals changed.
Correct. And then the one thing that I forgot to mention was when we placed our employees on the wage scale at the 1.5% on the wage scale, the direction given to the department heads and elected officials was to look through your office and fix any obvious compression issues. Because anytime you implement a wage study like this, you're going to create some compression issues between your employees that have been here for a like number of years or employees that have come from another organization into ours. So the direction was given to each elected official and department head to look through your budget and fix the glaring compensation compression issues. We were able to do that in a majority of the budgets, other than we did not do that to the public safety band, and I'll talk about why this afternoon at my presentation.
Mr. Chair.
You done good? Travis?
I just have a question, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. When you say final cost to implement, that means our total cost for our employees is going to be $2.2 million if we accept the way it is? Or is that just an additional $2.2 million on top of the actual budget currently?
The budget that is going to be presented to you that the auditor is going to talk to you about in a minute, it includes all of these costs.
So the $2.2 million is the total cost for all wages if this is implemented, versus last year was a total of how much?
2.7 last year, but the actual cost, I think, is 3.6 million. There's some offsetting revenues to the general fund, which brings that total to 2.2 million.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Last year, when we did our budget and did wages, the total cost was 2.7 million to our budget. This new revamping is going to be another 2.2 million added cost to our budget.
Correct. It would be 3.6 million, but there's some offsetting revenues to that, yes.
Okay, and I'll ask questions about those when you're going to talk about those offsetting revenues and how they're going to impact. Is that right?
Each individual department should talk through their revenues in their budget hearings.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with this wage study, we had project leads. Carol Brandcoft was the main lead on this project. She's what kept the wheels on the bus going through this last 17 months. A lot of experience came to the table with her in this realm. And then Cindy kept our finances on the wheels on the bus here, keeping us within those bumpers that, hey, you can't spend $10 million. So with that, our compensation subcommittees, myself, market analysis, the wage scale was myself and Brian. Benefits subcommittee, which helped put together the picnic that everybody was a part of here in June. Annette Brandt, communications, most important part, right? Sandy Sortland. Training was Kevin Carley. He helped with our light cast training and some other trainings that went through. And then budget, which is where we're at now, Sheriff Brian Mueller.
Well, that's all that we had for you today. We'd stand for any questions, and then hopefully you'll get all the particulars and be able to ask the individual elected officials and department heads specific questions about challenges and things that they were able to accomplish with keeping our wages competitive through this process.
Chair,
Ms. Agla.
did we put in the 2023, 2024 changes that we did last year on the total for changes for the wage scale, like department heads and elected officials? Was that in, the total amount was 2.2 plus? Did anybody add up what last year, the changes we made, and use the wage scale comparable and market analysis on those?
So the number, the 3.6 that you're seeing there with the 2.2 with the revenue offset is the 2024 budgeted dollars. So whatever their wage budgets were for 2024 versus the projected 2025 with the new implementation of the wage scale, that's the $2.2 million that you're seeing.
Okay, so what I'm saying is I get that, but what was the added? Am I missing something where you added in 2023, you added the elected officials and then on the wage scale, and then you did the department heads on, what, February 6th? You did the other ones 2019, I think it was, I don't remember if it was December. Were those totals added plus any other exceptions that we did that were added to the wage scale? Because
That
of
is
the wage
not in
scale?
the $3.6 million, but essentially what that did is get us closer to that 3.6, right? So if the department heads, the elected officials wouldn't have been elevated, and Carol, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if that wouldn't have been done in, I believe, February and then January of the year before, you'd just be seeing bigger increases for those department heads due to this, because she used the same process for those department heads and elected officials. I guess I can't speak for the elected officials, but for the department heads, that she used the same process and the same like entities.
Right.
So it would have it would have been a wash.
So what I'm saying is, you talked about Condrey and you talked about Gallagher, and you said how much it costs, but the total amounts with those extra entities isn't 2.2 or 3.6. It's added on to that. So in order to implement this wage scale, 23 to 24, 24 to 25, and then 25 to 26 should all be added in the total, because you've been changing that wage scale since June of, what, 23? So that's when you started implementing some of the changes from the wage scale, or your HR and the department heads have. So I'd like to see those totals just to see how much it actually costs bottom line for all the changes that we've made.
We can do that. Some of those costs are going to be actually reflected in the 2024 budget, so that's already done. And there might have been some that were done later in the year, but Cindy probably can help us sort that out.
Thank you,
I understand
Brian.
what you're saying.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lester.
I have another clarifying question, if you don't mind. Seeing the revenue offset, I could be wrong. I don't remember seeing that before in other, budget hearings and stuff of that nature. Maybe you have to do it to kind of show us how this unfolds. And I do recognize dispatch and emergency management. I know how whenever they're adding employees, FTEs and whatnot, how they can come up with their offsets, because sometimes it's what they're sharing with the city or the state or whatever. I get that. Typically, Joe, Road and Bridge Fund, I see $300,000 coming off of that for this revenue offset. Do you typically factor Road and Bridge Fund to pay for salaries? That's what I'm understanding that this is going to do. Do you typically use those funds to pay for your salaries of the individuals?
So why that 300,000 is coming out of there is because the Road and Bridge Fund does not affect the general fund. So the 2.2 is general fund cost. So if you were to add my 300,000 in there, it would be 2.5, but 2.2 to the general fund, right? My $300,000 does not affect the general fund because I don't get any general fund dollars.
Well, the total is 3.6.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And you're showing 1.3 million offset. I can understand the 4K from emergency management and dispatch 911 because I'm in those conversations when I'm on those committees. So I kind of understand those. That's why I'm asking specifically, do we normally do an offset and show it coming from the general fund and the road and bridge to meet our salary requirements, or am I just missing something on this?
We were strictly trying to show that the road and bridge fund does not affect the general fund. And this is the general fund ask is the $2.2 million.
But are you paying some of the salaries with road and bridge fund
we're paying all of our salaries, my salary, all of the staff at the highway department, all come out of road and bridge,
Okay,
the 201 fund.
okay.
I just want to say that I really appreciate the hard work that the group has done. You guys, I've sat in most of the meetings and you guys worked through a lot of stuff, you know, and just when you thought things were good, something else would come up and you guys managed to work with that too. So, but it's the teamwork that I've seen working together and the communication between all the groups was fantastic. And you continuously through all of your meetings had other departments coming in and sitting in through them and working through them. And the matrix of it was pretty amazing. I've sat through a lot of these Congress studies and so forth, and it never ceased to fail that we had outliers out there we didn't agree with. I think you guys did a good job of looking at in our area and what affects our section. And so I think you guys did a really good job on this. And I would just want to express my appreciation to the staff and all you guys for the hard work. And I think the matrix that you come up with and had to go through every employee's description and sit through them wasn't easy. And I think it's fair. You know, as you said, there's some that we're still way behind. You're catching them up, and I think we're on the right track.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Next on our agenda is Auditor Cindy May.
Do you already feel overwhelmed? Oh, I think I'm going to sit down because I'm going to need my computer.
No, you have to stand. Just kidding.
I think you really need my voice. I know. It's the internet. So I'm going to start with my normal provisional budget memo. And as you'll notice on the means of finance, which is up here, estimating our reserves at the end of 2025 to be 13.2%. There is, our growth is sitting at 1.7 right now. I have heard that the city has a couple of TIFs that are going to be dissolved, so I'm hoping that's going to come up a little bit. Hopefully gain us about another 450,000 in growth for our tax revenue, which will help out our general fund. I did put together, very preliminary numbers for the mill levies, which is on the second page of that memo. Overall, as they said with the wages, I know we've seen increases in, obviously, our operational expenditures. I lost my other memo. My other notes, I should say. 23 did not come out quite as I had projected that it would. Part of that is due to the decrease in our over-collected revenues. Normally, we have 3, 5, 7, maybe even 10% of over-collected revenues. And in 23, it was only 0.93%. So we weren't even 1% over-collected in the general fund. So that kind of makes a big impact on where our reserves end at the end of the year. So with that, I would also like to talk about the reserves, since I mentioned the 13.2%. Currently, the way I calculate our reserves is to look at strictly the unassigned fund balance in the general fund. There are other ways that we can look at it. I've always told you I'm very conservative, so I wanted to make sure that anything that was set aside for our assigned reserves was left intact, and so I only wanted to look at the unassigned reserves. When they look at the bond rating, that sort of thing, they also look at those assigned reserves. So there's other ways that we can look at calculating that, and I guess in my opinion, it might be best to discuss that after everybody gets through their initial presentations. We can kind of talk about where it's at. You can talk about where you would like to see the departments go. Whether we want to include some of the assigned reserves to get to our reserve percentage that you want to see. I think overall, even sitting where we're at today or where we're going to be sitting at the end of 25 with our unassigned reserves, our bond rating is still going to be intact. I'm not worried about that. I think that will be just fine moving forward. I do think that we need to look for, other revenue sources, because obviously these ongoing expenditures, we can't continue to do what we're doing in letting our reserves go down too far. But I think that's something that we really need to keep in mind. Does anybody want to just get into the reserve discussion now, or would you rather discuss it after everybody is through their presentations? You kind of know where we're headed.
Typically, Cindy, we've worked to try to get up to 20.
Correct.
And we've had, in the last couple of years, have been down to 18. And I think you nailed it, is a lot of it, we were getting the uncollected or over revenue was coming back, and that would bring us up to where we needed to be. So that kind of tells me that if you had .9, they pretty much used everything that they needed to do their budgets, if I'm correct. Because the last 3 or 4 years have been pretty difficult. We've directed staff to do cuts, and then things weren't as bad as they were, so we ended up using that for other things. So it's good to hear that you're saying that even if we end up under that 20 where we would, it doesn't affect our bond rating.
Yeah, I think our bond rating, like you said, will be intact just because of the way that they look at it with the assigned reserves, looking at the assigned reserves as well. And my goal of getting you to accept the 20% of unassigned was to keep those assigned reserves intact. But obviously, if there's an emergency at any point, the board can say,
Yeah.
sorry, that 300,000 that's sitting in assigned reserves is no longer assigned. It's going to be used for this emergency. I just wanted to see us be able to keep those assigned reserves intact, because the whole purpose of budgeting for those assigned reserves is so that when you do have a major expense, like the sheriff with the prison transport bus, that doesn't hit that budget all in 1 year. An increase of $700,000 to his budget, just like that. We've kind of set aside a little bit every year, so it's sitting in that assigned reserve. When he's ready to purchase, then we can do a budget supplement from that assigned reserve, and it doesn't affect our unassigned fund balance as much.
I would probably suggest, we're looking at doing another special work session meeting to follow through with this. So unless the commissioners have other discussions, it'd be nice to get through this and then have those discussions after we hear from everybody's budgets. Ms. Hadcock?
So the .93 was the overcollected. That was from department heads. What was the percentage of the reserve at the end of the year on assigned?
On the unassigned,
Unassigned, sorry.
I thought I had that in this memo. I want to say it was about 19% at the end of 23, and looking at the end of 24, 24, I'm thinking we're gonna be down to about 16%.
Okay. So what has driven it so we have been making the percentage so low? Do we have what we spend it on, or is it just,
Well, some of that has been some of the one-time expenditures that we've done over the last couple years.
okay, and
So
those,
it's not necessarily on ongoing expenditures, but it's the one-time expenditures that I think we've done a few things on there that definitely have driven that unassigned down.
so do we have those unassigned reserve things that we spent the money on? Do you have a list of those?
No, I don't have a list
Okay.
of those.
Only because we're driving it down, we should probably see the list to make sure, that we don't just keep spending money on one time. And I know of a few different areas that we had to use some of the unassigned for that we didn't plan for in '23, to use some of '24's budget. Am I correct?
I'm sorry, I did not follow where you were going.
So in '23, did we have to use any of the '23 budget to go into '24's budget in order to fund anything in '23? We didn't, only because we still had the reserves of 19 point, whatever, the .93, like Commissioner Croy said, was basically under-collected, and that's from the or over-collected from the department heads. That's what kind of made some of
That
that.
side was the revenue side.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's usually higher, so it makes the percentage of the reserve go up for the next year or not.
If we have over-collected revenues and underspent budget, yes,
Right.
that does help to maintain that reserve. And I do usually project that. I mean, I use those assumptions when I'm doing your projections for where we're going to be at the end of the year.
So so Miss Cindy, you said you were at 19.5 now, but will only be at 13.21 at the end of 2025. So what's driving that down?
We are ending up using more cash applied,
Okay, basically using more budget than we have.
using more out of unassigned reserves.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lester.
a follow-up to that then. Is there a way to figure out, or do you have what we've spent money on that we didn't plan in our budget? Maybe that's the question to ask, is what have we been spending money on that's driven it down 5.63%?
I can certainly go back and try and figure out our larger expenditures. I mean, obviously, we did, have the purchases of the buildings. So some of that money was my projections, considering the unexpended and the over-collected revenues were off. So had that come in where they should have, the money that we moved over to accumulated building and to the capital projects fund for those buildings wouldn't have affected our unassigned reserve, but because those projections were off, I was just wrong. That's why you're seeing that reduction in the reserve.
Mr. Chair, follow up on that one. What caused those projections to be wrong? And just out of curiosity, I mean, it could be that, the market didn't do what it's supposed to, right? I mean, is there?
Well, as I said, the over-collected revenue was less than 1%. And that's not usually the case. I know like with the sheriff has talked about it with his jail revenues, not being able to house as many Marshals prisoners, his revenues were down. So it's some of those things, not being able to sell tax certificates. That's another thing that brought down our revenues.
Okay.
And inflation in general, I believe drove the expenses so that we didn't have as much unexpended budget as we normally do either.
Okay, thank you.
So we want to look at the reserves after we're done,
I think so.
maybe set that special meeting so that we can go dive a little bit deeper into
Yes.
different options. Okay? Change stats. And I believe my budgets are up next.
Okay. You're on the first page for the general fund 101. Which one you got? Elections 120.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And you'll see, of course, that the elections budget is down going into '25. Obviously, we will just be working on doing the combined elections for the municipal and school, unless we would happen to have some sort of a special election come up. So that is why you're going to see a decrease in the elections budget. You'll see it in salaries as well, because we won't be paying the precinct workers for 2 elections. So you're going to see a decrease in both of those. And in the auditor's office budget, there again, I brought it down and just a little bit going into that, just looking at overall wages. We did have the grant manager in the auditor's office budget, and so that position has been moved back over to the sheriff's budget, so that's why you're seeing the adjustments in my personnel items.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laski.
and I just want to make sure that I'm in the same mindset. The proposed budget and your wages and salaries, that is with the current wage study proposed numbers?
That is correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're talking apples to apples. Thank you.
Yes, yes, that is correct. Any questions on either one of those budgets?
Any questions on personnel? Nope.
Then for the domestic abuse program fund, that's money in, money out. So I do my best to estimate what we're going to have for revenues, because everything that comes in as a revenue is going to go out as an expense. And currently, that is going to Women Against Violence, Inc. That is where the county is forwarding those funds on to.
That's the 0434 domestic abuse one.
Yes. And that, like I said, that's a separate fund, so all of the money that goes into that fund turns around and goes out. We pay out once a quarter to Working Against Violence. Any questions on that? And then the next budget that I do is the budget for the bond payments, which comes out of accumulated building. And I kind of went down and gave you a list of what our long-term liabilities are, so you can see what outstanding bond issues we have and what our bond payments are looking like for the next 10 years.
Cindy,
Yes.
so are we, can we get another bond at this point? And does it opt out, or how does that, if we decided to do another bond like
We would
for-
have to discuss how to move forward with something like that. We can certainly have Tom Grimman from Colliers come in and discuss that if we need to.
Okay.
What does that paper look like? I'm not seeing it.
It's under the bond section.
It's on your
Oh, it's
bond
in
section.
bonds, okay.
When we redid those, or when we did the 2022 bonds, I had asked Tom to basically keep those payments about the same, because we levy for accumulated building, fair, and the general fund all under one levy, basically. It's called a county consolidated levy. So anything that has to go to increase accumulated building or the fair fund comes out of what supports the general fund. So I had asked him to try and keep those payments about the same as what we were doing, so we weren't pulling any more from the general fund to make our bond payments.
Keeping it all the same.
So if we did a bond payment, are we at our max, or you don't know that at this point either?
No, I don't know that at this point. It would
Okay.
depend on how much we needed and how we decided to move forward to fund it. I
Okay.
can, like I said, if we get to that point, we can certainly have Tom come in and we can go through the options for that.
Okay, I'm just looking at it for jail-wise, if we're moving forward, what that bond would look like if we had bond for the jail.
Yeah, I think that's a whole nother discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any questions for me?
Any further questions for Cindy?
Okay,
Sounds like you're good, Cindy.
thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Health and Human Services with Barry Tice.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Barry Tice, the Director of Pennington County Human Services in the Veterans Service Office. I'm going to take the next 2 hours and 75 slides to present what I have on the Human Services budget. I was just trying to loosen up the crowd a little bit. I wanted to highlight the modest increases in the Human Services and Veteran Service budget based on 2 specific requests. And we are not requesting any additional employees for 2025. First, we propose minor wage adjustments for the 17 county-funded employees who collectively have over 196 years of experience. And as you heard, our HR director, as well as Sheriff and Joe Miller discuss, we place a really high priority on longevity of our employees, and we're lucky. We have really good employees who have been with Pennington County for a lot of years. Additionally, we requested some funds to purchase a newer used vehicle to support the hundreds of transports that are provided through our transitional coordinators, by our transitional coordinators to Human Services, the Veteran Service Office, Rebound Care Campus, and Pivot Point. And I have visited with Sheriff Mueller on the possibilities of acquiring a vehicle from their fleet in 2025. But that's definitely a piece that's on our radar, and we're fortunate. We've inherited a vehicle from the IT department a few years ago, as well as a vehicle from County Fire when Denny Gordon retired, and the sheriff and previous sheriff have always been good about trying to find us vehicles, so that's just a piece to put on your radar. I just received word Human Services was approved for $240,000 through foundation funding, which that enhances our ability to support the areas where we don't necessarily use all county funding, and we leverage taxpayer dollars. So we're fortunate foundation is going to support us again for 2 more years. And this benefits our clients and the county because we're able to offset some of the funding that we might have to use county funds for. We also have remaining funds from the Bureau of Justice Innovations and Reentry Initiative. That was scheduled to end this September. Since we did not hire an additional employee through those funds, these funds could support this program through September of 2025 and continue to fund a position within the Rebound Reentry Program. So we're waiting approval from the Bureau of Justice for a no-cost extension on that, which we should receive, I say, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. With that, those are the highlighted pieces out of the Human Services and Veteran Service budget, and I would stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Drews.
So, Barry, the 240,000 you just talked about,
Yes.
is that included in here already, or?
The 240,000 is through Vakurvich Foundation, so that will come to us. The check hasn't been sent yet.
Okay.
So when I referenced it in your narrative, we had not been approved, and then I found out today that we were approved.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lester.
all of your FTEs are filled?
Correct.
Okay, no open slots.
No open slots.
Okay.
Any other questions for Barry? Anything else you want to add, Barry?
I don't. You're always welcome to send an email if anything comes up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Next, we have public defenders. We'll look in there. Give us a minute, Eric, to find it. You're going to start with the first page, 152. Okay. We got it.
In the back of your budget books, Commissioners,
Oh.
in the public defender section, Eric's PowerPoint is
Okay.
behind his budget sheets. I believe is what he's gonna start with.
I see that.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your work, and I do want to thank the committees and all the effort that's gone into the wage scale. As a department head that has been doing this for 18 years, I've been through so many wage studies. It was always a very opaque process. You never knew why certain employees were placed on a certain band and a certain scale. A lot of times they made absolutely no sense, and this was a very open and really thoughtful process. So I think we're just really fortunate to have gone through this process. But I want to just talk a little bit about our 2025 budget, and I think to begin that, always got to look back at a 2023 year in review, see where we've been. This past year in 2023, we did see total cases assigned to our office of 5,826. That was an increase of 10% from 2022. We were assigned 1,673 felonies, which was an increase of 4.3%, 2,949 in misdemeanors, which was almost a 14% increase, and then 379 juvenile cases, an increase of 5.5 over a year prior. I want to just take a moment to 2023 in many respects was a very difficult year, as I think the Commission is well aware. We were severely understaffed for much of the year. We had, although budgeted 20 attorneys, we had about 16, or 21 attorneys, we had 16 and myself. And we'll later talk about how many we really needed. We needed about 22 attorneys to handle the caseloads that was assigned to us. But through that, well, our trial advocacy was still terrific. We had, most cases in criminal cases now are resolved through a plea agreement, where some files might be dismissed, or cases or charges might be reduced, or whatever that could be. But when we were unable to resolve a case pre-trial, one of the data points I've been looking at for a long time is what happens when we set them for trial. And we set 218 cases for trial. Of those, 144 were dismissed, 14 were tried to a jury, and we had 8 not guilty verdicts and 3 hung juries where the jury was unable to reach a verdict. So our staff, despite being understaffed, just did a tremendous job. We have a lot of really excellent lawyers and experienced lawyers, and so I'm just so proud of the work that they do every day. And when we talk about, I think small stories sometimes paints pictures of what we do. And one of our attorneys was sharing a story of a client who was charged with driving under revocation, and the client said, I swear my driver's license is not revoked. And we got an abstract from the state which said, yes, your driver's license is revoked. And he said, it didn't happen, so we had to get transcripts and proceedings, and sure enough, there was a mistake at the state level. Her license was not, in fact, revoked. So those are the small things that we do on a day-to-day basis to make big impact on individuals' lives. So I'm really proud of our staff. In 2023 was tough. We had, and this was, as I think Carol's slide indicated, how much turnover there was, just really employee-wide across the county and across the nation. We were not immune to that, and we lost a lot of people, and we've really changed how we recruit now. We ended up getting 3 of the employees that had left us for other opportunities. We got them back. We had recruited really hard this year for new attorneys. That's the best way to get really good talent, is to go to law schools and recruit students and hire them a year in advance. We've got 3 new attorneys starting here after they take the bar exam here in July, and then we'll be full again. So, and we did a lot of other things too. And part of that was working with the commission, with HR to provide some more opportunities for employees. And part of that's reflected in our budget as well, as what we're asking new attorneys to be able to start at. The attorney market is extremely tight in the state of South Dakota. We are tied for second to the last, I think, attorneys per capita in the country. So if everyone thinks, great, there's hardly any lawyers you can find, well, that means they're expensive. And that's just the reality of it. We have 1 law school in our state, and most people want to go to live in Sioux Falls or go to a different state after they graduate. So it's a real challenge. It's going to continue to be a challenge here in Pennington County to hire state's attorneys and public defenders. With that, one of the ways that we manage when we are desperately understaffed or have increases in cases is we get out of some cases. And this last 2023, we got out of 477 cases. We do that in an orderly fashion, so there's not shocks to the system, so there's private counsel that can accept them. And in 2023, we got out of 477 cases. Under old ABA standards, and I'll talk about what new ABA standards are in just a moment, but that translates to a little less than 2 lawyers worth, but it really helps just to deflate that balloon a little bit to try to hang on to the staff you have. What can happen is there's a cascading effect. As lawyers, we get burnt out because they're being asked to do things they don't have time to do. And so you either have them not help people, or else they work, weekends and nights. And at some point, people burn out, then they leave. And then the problem exacerbates because now you have fewer attorneys to handle it. And we're just not able in the marketplace to go replace that attorney that leaves immediately. It takes months, oftentimes all the way until next August when you can get a new attorney. So it's a real challenge that we have to face. I'm proud of our team. Our management team worked hard in recruiting and retention. We have a strong culture, I think, that helps, which is, I think, a real testament of why we got 3 of our attorneys who had left for other opportunities to come back. So I'm happy to say we will be fully staffed again. So 2024 outlook, let's switch to that now. As of January 30th, I checked where we're at. We had 2935 total cases assigned to us the first half of the year, so that's a projection of 5,870 cases this year, which is a slight increase of what we had last year. The only caveat I would give to that is usually July and August are our busiest months, so we'll probably be over by a fair amount from 2023. So I talked a little bit about old ABA standards and new ABA standards. And the new standards needs to be adopted by the Commission on Indigent Legal Services, which really just began its work here in July, on what those are going to be for the state of South Dakota. The old ABA standards, which have been with us for about 60 years, no attorney, the ABA said no attorney should accept more than 150 felony case assignments in a given year, or 400 misdemeanors, or 300 juveniles, or 25 appeals. Those are the things that they spoke about. Recognizing that there is a limit on how much time a lawyer has and the requirements to actually effectively represent someone, those were the old ABA standards. They didn't take into account a whole lot of things because they didn't exist at the time. Body-worn cameras, for example. Just in most cases, there are multiple police officers on scene, even for a fairly routine matter. And each of their body-worn cameras is running, and part of our due diligence is to make sure that we review that footage. Oftentimes, there's also a dash cam. Sometimes there's multiple police cars with dash cams running. So all of those things, they take an incredible amount of time for lawyers to get through. Plus, the standards have really increased. Back in the 80s, people often expect, well, if your 10th trial is pretty good, then somebody got a fairly good. That doesn't exist anymore. Our standards are very high now. People expect attorneys to be able to try a case on their very first trial and do a good job at it. So the standards have increased. So when we talk about the new ABA standards, what the RAND Corporation did a time study of attorneys, but they didn't include our state. They picked other states and did time studies. And what they projected, if an attorney is going to work on an average of 2,080 hours in a year, then in the time that it took them for handling felony work, they shouldn't take more than 60 low-level felonies. Well, you can see the difference between 150 and 60. They're saying we should be taking substantially fewer cases. And then on very severe cases where people are facing up to life in prison, it shouldn't take more than 10 in a given year. So, and then on misdemeanors, 175. But again, they didn't study South Dakota. So we really need and when you project that out to what our caseload is at the public defender's office here, is we would need 50 to 60 attorneys. And I know that's not right. I know that's not right, because part of it on some of these low-level misdemeanors are saying, on average, the attorneys in those states are spending 13 hours on those cases. And there's just we just couldn't do that in our state. Even like that example I gave you, which would be a misdemeanor, whereas that took many hearings, that probably took 13 hours. But that's a real outlier. Most of our cases are status offenses. Do you have a driver's license or do you not? Do you have insurance or do you not? If they get insurance, the state's attorney's office will dismiss them. I can give that advice in 30 seconds. And it wouldn't behoove our client for us to bill all the time for 13 hours on something that's going to be dismissed if they go get insurance. So South Dakota has made choices at the legislative level that if we want to stop people from doing something, we make it a crime. If we want them to do something like register their vehicle, we make it a crime. And unfortunately, the taxpayers pay for that. And anytime jeopardy attaches, that's when people have the right to counsel, which is where our office can get assigned. So that new commission is going to have to adopt new standards, but we don't know what they're going to be yet. So, but it'll likely be an increase of what the old ABCA standards are. Those have become out of date. So let's go to the 2025 outlook. What I can expect in 2025 will likely see an increases in cases. I think we're going to see a tight labor market continue for lawyers. We're going to see new caseload standards. I think we're going to continue to see elevated serious violent crime and first-degree murder mitigation expenses. So my 2025 budget priorities is a witness budget for expenses in first-degree murder cases, and I'll talk about that a little bit when we go through the budget. Our software for new case management system, and lawyers and staff to meet the future demand. The witness budget, I just want to talk to you a little bit about that. So right now, we've been asked in more than one case to provide mitigation information to the prosecution on a couple of high-level cases. And so in any death penalty case, there's a minimum of really $500,000 added expenses. And so with those, what I've asked for in 2025 is $250,000 an increase in our witness budget, or witness and expense budget, for professional mitigation experts as well as other experts. We are already some of this is already being expended here in 2024 because we have to employ them. It's on average 400 hours per case. Mitigation specialists, and they're a significant per hour. So part of that will be in this budget. So this is a hedge. If the state does ultimately seek death penalty in those cases, that'll be low at $250,000 extra. If they don't, it might be a little high. So, and that money would come back to the county. The second thing is services and fees software. Really, the modern practice of law requires expensive software. We have been operating on our old system for a very long time, but these also include subscriptions to legal research, case management software, and transcription. What we have really prioritized is try to be having our lean staff as efficient as possible, and that's going to be through these software programs. So you're going to see that increase in our budget line under services and fees. So that's going to be our biggest increase this year in non-employees, and that's all through software. And then finally is lawyers and staff to meet this demand. So to meet the demand of what we had last year, we need 2 more attorneys. And so I'm asking for 3 in the anticipation of 2025, as well as 1 secretary to help support them. I recognize that this is a lot to ask for. I know there are lots of budget priorities that you have to weigh through, but That's what I'm asking for, to try to meet my anticipated demand. And this chart will sort of establish how we determine how many attorneys we need to manage our caseload. So these are through the old ABA standards. I've discussed this a little bit, so I won't belabor the point, but when you add up how many we needed for 2023, that'd be 22.7 attorneys based upon our last year's assigned files. And in conclusion, our proposed budget is an attempt to meet its important duties and as efficiently and effectively as possible. If we can just turn to the budget then, and again, that line of services and fees at 73,000, that's increase from last year. Primarily that is FileVine, which is going to be our new software program. But there are increases in our other software programs and some new ones for transcription as well that to add up. The tailwind that we have is we won't need our rental property any longer because we'll be moving into our new building. So that'll save us 35,000. So a total of 40,080 in our expense side, operations side. As far as employee side, we, just placing on this new pay scale, I think the attorneys would use, moving them to a starting salary of $84,000 gets us relatively competitive, and I say relatively competitive with our Sioux Falls area, which is our #1 competitor. I think looking at other states, looking at other places is useful. At the same time, South Dakota is a closed system. You have to be licensed to practice law in the state of South Dakota. And our by far #1 competitor is Sioux Falls. And, Lawrence County has 5 or 6 attorneys, and you'll have 1 or 2 in some various other counties, but it's really Sioux Falls and Lincoln area. And they're over $90,000 at starting. So this gets us closer. So I really, I want to advocate for our lawyers because that is going to be our challenge in the future in 2025 is getting new people to start here in Pennington County. And we have to be somewhat competitive with Minnehaha. Yeah.
So in your 411 to 428 budget, your increase is 446,708, and that's with or without the 3 new FTEs with the secretary.
Can you repeat that one?
So your total amount is 4,176,479. Your change from 24 to 25 is 446,708.
That does not include the other FTEs. The new
3
FTEs are on a different
Okay.
page, so those total about $500,000.
Okay, and then also you'd like another 250 in your line item for witness 131.
That's right.
So you're asking for 696,708 at this time? And that's not including the extra FTEs.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Roskinek.
Eric, you got 37 full-time employees, 4 part-time. Out of those, how many have 1 to 3 years experience as a public defender? Just curious.
From 1 to 3.
You can give me a percent, just a rough percent.
I'll probably be able to just figure them out before I get the percent right, but.
I'm guessing that the
3.
majority of them are new and.
Well, I think that number is actually only 3.
Okay.
Let's see if I phone a friend. Do I have that right? Okay. I'm seeing nods. So we're kind of lucky. We have a pretty experienced staff that have, we have a lot of attorneys that have been with us for quite a while.
Okay,
But
you don't want them to get burnt out.
That's right. We don't want them to get burned out now. If you ask me that same question in September, that number goes to 6. So it's going to be different because we have 3 new attorneys going to be joining us here.
On the software cost, 73,660, what's the longevity of that software? Is it, you got to update it or replace it?
Yes, every year we're going to have, well, as far as updates go, I think they're constantly updating, but as far as, this will be an ongoing expense every year going forward. It really is. FileVine is going to be that same amount for our contract period. And
Westlaw seems to go up a little bit every year, and our other software programs just do as well, and other expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions? Anything else, Eric?
Nothing further. Thank you very much.
Next up, brings us up to State's Attorney's Office and recognize Laura Russell. Do you think the tabs would be back to back? Just saying.
Mr. Chair. Commissioners, good afternoon, everyone. I am State's Attorney Laura Retzel. I'm honored to be giving my second budget presentation to you, Honorable Commission. I am a crime fighter and the designated legal representative of Pennington County. I'm honored to be in my first election cycle and to be running unopposed. I've been employed by the Pennington County State's Attorney's Office for the majority of my legal career, which began in 1996, 28 years ago. These are the public servants of the Pennington County State's Attorney's Office. And please indulge me while I use my budget presentation to give a little bit of information and data about the State's Attorney's Office. I think it's very important for you to know why it's important to fully fund the State's Attorney's Office. The State's Attorney's Office has 27 attorneys, 7 victim advocates, if you include our director, Alexandra Sterling Robertson. I'm going to be talking more about our Victims Assistance Department because there's going to be an important ask there later on. We have 4 diversion specialists, including our director, Kim Marshing. We employ 26 talented legal secretaries, 2 investigators. We did add another investigator this year with retired FBI agent Bob Bennett joining our roster. He's been an amazing addition for us. We also have a public information officer. I have you all to thank for that. Adding Katie Urban to the State's Attorney's Office has been a huge win for us. Brendan Medina at the Police Department and Helene Duhamel at the Sheriff's Office give tremendous insight into the work of law enforcement. But for years, when cases come over to the State's Attorney's Office, no one knows anything about what happens to them. And the media gives little bites of cases that are of interest to them, but the narrative has never been informed by what's important from the State's Attorney's Office perspective. And so now we have Katie Urban, who's able to give information to the media and to the public and about the important public partners that we have in the criminal justice system, in the State's Attorney's Office. And information is coming out of the State's Attorney's Office like never before. And it's valuable and it's informative, and she's here today, and she'll give information to the public about the information and what happens here. And it's all so important because it's giving everyone insight into the important work that we do at the State's Attorney's Office and the important work that we do in Pennington County. And this summer we have 5 interns, and I think they're so important to mention because they also link to another very important concept, important to me, and that's transparency. So having those interns come in and act as ambassadors into the work of the State's Attorney's Office is great. They're also tremendous feeders as future lawyers. We have college students, law students, 5 of them doing work this summer. They're also great cheap labor, which I love. So when the commission thinks of the state's attorney's office, I think you guys think about Jay Alderman, because he's here every Tuesday, and he's right in front of you, and he's doing the majority of your legal work, and he's easy for you to think of, but he is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the legal work being done by the state's attorney's office. The civil department actually has 7 attorneys, not just the ones that do the work that's obvious to you, representative of the wide responsibilities of the commission and the 19 vast and interesting departments and elected offices of the county. But we do a ton of other legal work, right? We're doing drug and alcohol commitments, zoning violations, mental illness commitments, drug and alcohol commitments, bus stop violations, failure to pay sales tax, and of course, everybody's favorite tax assessment appeals. Our civil attorneys play a pivotal role in shaping the legal landscape of our community by reviewing and drafting proposed legislation, ordinances, resolutions, contracts, joint powers agreements, and real estate agreements as well. This includes intricate matters involving the acquisition, leasing, and disposal of county property, demonstrating a multifaceted expertise in navigating diverse legal challenges. So not just the 4 attorneys you see regularly, but there's also attorneys up there that are doing other work that I'm going to talk about in just a second, abuse and neglect work, and juvenile delinquency work as well. The rest of our office practices criminal law. Our office receives every single arrest that happens in Pennington County. We don't get to say that we're full, like you just heard Eric Witcher talk about at the Public Defender's Office. We don't get to conflict off cases when 2 people are involved in the same crime. We handle every single criminal arrest, whether it comes from Game Fish and Parks, or the Pennington County Sheriff, or the Rapid City Police Department, Fox Elder Police Department. If a crime is committed in Pennington County, it comes to my office. In addition, our criminal attorneys participate in specialty courts, jail population review teams, and collaborate with community partners on committees of every sort and type. The demands and expectation of criminal prosecution are ever increasing, and I'll tell you just a little bit about what that looks like for us. In 2023, our felony case filings were 2,569. So a felony is anything you can go to prison for. 2,569 cases got filed. Those are the ones that we brought to court and filed. Those range from everything from a DUI third offense to a homicide case. These are our very most serious offenses. What do those look like? About half of them are drug cases. Drug cases, I will tell you, are significantly impacting our health, our individuals, our families, and our community in Pennington County. It's methamphetamine and it's fentanyl. And it's tearing our community apart. It's a war that we quite simply are not winning. We at the state's attorney's office will continue to collaborate with the courts, law enforcement, and other service agencies to combat this rising tide of drug offenses in Pennington County, but it's not something that's going away anytime soon. Number 2 and number 3, I pulled apart for a very significant reason. Aggravated assault, domestic violence, and regular aggravated assault are 2 very different crimes, and the significance of the domestic violence tag should not be lost on any of you, because the domestic violence tag indicates that those crimes have happened between people that have an intimate relationship. So those people are married, or they have children together, or they're involved in a significant romantic relationship. And typically that means they have children together. And when very serious aggravated assault is violence that's very, very serious. This is a felony level assault, not a simple assault. When that type of violence is occurring in families or between people involved in significant romantic relationships, they're impacting our most sacred institution, right? Marriages and families and children. And that impacts long-term children in what we know are called adverse child experiences. And that's how we make sure that I will stay in business through my career and the career of all of the prosecutors to come. And that's significant, and that's something that we all need to think about. The other one I want to point out to you is number 7, because it's also very, very disturbing. And that's the fact that simple assault on law enforcement is the number 7 top felony charge in Pennington County. And it's unique also because simple assault on law enforcement is committed more in Pennington County than in any other county in the state of South Dakota, including Minnehaha County, which has a greater population. And that's concerning, and that's something that we should all be very disappointed in our community for. I point all of this out because I'm coming with a big ask. And it's important that you understand the state of violent crime in our community. And it's significant. So these are our violent crime numbers in 21, 22, and 23. Our COVID violence was high and out of control, especially in the murder range. But it's not gotten better, especially when you look at those aggravated assault, the robbery, the theft, and the stolen motor vehicle charges. Violent crime in our community continues to rise. You heard it in the defenders, in Mr. Witcher's presentation. You'll hear it in the sheriff's up next. And you'll see it in the most dangerous, most concerning slide in my presentation, which is our active homicide cases. For a community our size, you should not see this number of homicide cases, 23 pending homicide cases. About half of those are holdovers from COVID, when we know we had in 2021 the most homicides our community's ever seen. I'm still trying to close those out. But 7 last year, I will tell you, I'm close to pulling that in 2024 now. And it's the beginning of July. And we know that July and August tend to be our most violent months of the year. So I have 20 murders, 3 vehicular homicides. And as I look at these numbers, it concerns me. And I know that I need to do something about it. So I was grateful when you commissioners gave me the new position for a major crime prosecutor, because this is my solution. And it's the creation of a major crimes unit. So unlike Mr. Witcher's shop, which is very experienced, mine isn't. I've lost the majority of my experienced prosecutors to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Attorney General's Office and Minnehaha County State's Attorney's Office and everybody else that can pull them away because they can pay them a whole lot more than I can, and they'll have a whole lot less work. It's just a fact. I have been grateful to pull back Gina Nelson and Kelsey Blair, and I've got some talent. So I took my 3 most experienced prosecutors, which all hover around the 7-year mark. Yes, you heard me right, the 7-year mark. And I put them in this major crimes unit. And you're letting me pay them about what they should be paid. About what they should be paid. And I'm going to pull their caseload down. But I can only do that with your help. You've got to give me one more. My ultimate ask is going to be for 2, and I'll explain the second one in a minute. One more, so that when I pull their caseload, their felony caseload numbers down, that I don't drown my other felony attorneys. So I'm going to pull their case numbers down so that they can actually give these cases the attention they deserve. Because my felony attorneys are running 200 felony cases each, not in a year, like Mr. Witcher was explaining that his have. With all due respect, his defenders do fantastic work, but my prosecutors are drowning. They got 200 cases each right now, a day, not in a year. And if you're working class 2s and above with people looking at life sentences, rape cases, you don't have the time to devote to those cases in the way that those cases deserve. So with the creation of this unit, I could pull down those case numbers, give them their own paralegal, their own legal secretaries, and their own investigator, and pray that they can give those cases the attention they deserve. But I have to have another attorney to be able to pull down those case numbers so I can give those extra cases, those other felony cases, to another attorney. Is that making sense in the way that I've described it, commissioners? All right. Victim advocacy. Here comes my other ask. When I became state's attorney, I became the complaint unit. The buck stops here. I understand that. I return every phone call to the best of my ability. I started hearing complaints from victims and witnesses that their interactions with my staff did not meet my expectations. I didn't need an HR survey to hear that my staff was burnt out, stressed out. We deal with the traumatized. It's just reality. We're dealing with people who are traumatized, angry, victimized, stolen from, beaten, robbed, ticked off, inconvenienced. We try to fix it, or we at least try to make it a little better, and to help them through the criminal justice system on that long, long journey to Lady Justice, if we're lucky and blessed. So as I listened to these victims, I thought it would be helpful to do victim listening sessions. And I began bringing in victims and doing these panels, and they would tell me about their experiences with law enforcement, with the criminal justice system, and with my office, and there were a couple of themes. Two are relevant. One is that court cases take too long. That's a different fight. The second are that my advocates didn't have time for them, and it was true. They don't. My 4 advocates are responsible for handling thousands of cases every year. My office handles 10,000 cases a year. 10,000. It's not enough for 4 victim advocates to handle in a way that will give a victim any level of respect. We are not meeting their constitutional or statutory rights, not because we don't care, not because we don't want to, but because we do not have the time, because we do not have sufficient staffing. I have to have another victim advocate. I have a small but mighty misdemeanor department. Last year, they did 6,254 misdemeanor cases. And here's my next ask, and I'll try to make it quick. When I became state's attorney, I started going out in community, and like you, I became a politician. And as I went out in community, I began hearing about what mattered to people and what they were concerned about. And when it came to crime, what were they concerned about, commissioners? When you go out in community and people talk to you about crime, what do they talk to you about? Theft. Panhandling, theft, speeding on their streets. It's the little things. They're called quality of life crimes. They don't want to hear me talk about my rape cases or murder or how violent our streets are. They know those things, but those aren't affecting people on a day-to-day basis, right? The things that are affecting people on a day-to-day basis, it's this stuff. It's the fact that when they went shopping at Kohl's at Christmas time, somebody walked out with an armload of clothes and no one stopped them. No one seemed to care. And it's the fact that their cousin has a liquor store downtown that has to close because people steal bottle after bottle after bottle and no one's prosecuting it. The police don't even come. They don't even take a theft report because it's under the threshold, and so they don't make an arrest and they don't prosecute it. Law enforcement doesn't care, right? It's that, they're speeding on their streets and law enforcement's not responding. It's these things. And the sheriff and I and the mayor and the chief of police heard this over and over and over again, and it became so important to us. It was so important to the people in the community that we decided to do something about it. And we're thankful that we've been put in a position where we can. And so we began this huge anti-theft campaign when we realized that this was factual. There was a 16% increase in thefts in our community. So due to that, we collaborated together and we came up with this plan to enhance efforts to identify, apprehend, and prosecute individuals who commit theft from area businesses. And I could read you paragraphs about it, but let me just tell you what my role was. I realized that the Pennington County State's Attorney's Office had created thresholds for prosecution. And in summary, it looked like this. I didn't have the capacity to prosecute low-level theft. I just didn't. We just didn't. So if you shoplifted alcohol under a certain dollar amount, we didn't prosecute it. And that was really hurting our small businesses. It was really hurting them. And even Walmart, if you shoplifted under a certain dollar amount at Walmart, we weren't prosecuting it. And we had set all these thresholds because we didn't have the capacity to prosecute it. And so as part of this campaign, I tore them all down. And I'm proud to tell you that the day that I sat down my lawyers and I told them about this, there were cheers in the room. They were proud of our office for doing this, but it's about killed us. Just one tiny example, Megan Kruger and I worked on Memorial Day. We gave up our holiday. We charged 100 petty theft warrants on Memorial Day. This is going to put our numbers through the roof. I want to live, you all want to live, the people behind me want to live in a community where every single theft gets prosecuted. That's the community we want to live in. We don't want to live in Seattle where our deodorant is behind a screen and you have to have a key to unlock it to purchase it. That's not where we want to live. But if we want to live in a community where you can buy a candy bar and not have to ask permission to have it from behind the counter, then we have to have the people to prosecute it. I need another lawyer. I need another lawyer in my misdemeanor department. I have to have it because it's crushing us. Low-level petty thefts matter in this community. The prosecution of retail theft is important in this community, but I have to have one more lawyer to do it. We prosecute juvenile crime. We're doing a good job of it. Law enforcement is doing a good job of it. Our numbers are down. We prosecute abuse and neglect cases. Abuse and neglect cases are when we represent the Department of Social Services involving the placement of children into the department's legal and sometimes physical custody under the continuing supervision of the court. The ultimate aim is to serve the best interests of children involved in these cases. As the aunt of 3 children adopted out of the Department of Social Services and the daughter of a career child protection officer, these cases are very near and dear to me. I'm a law and order girl, but juvenile diversion, we are a diversion first office. And I'm a big believer in second chances. This is important. 669 youth diverted in Pennington County last year with an 87% success rate. Another big win for Pennington County. $250 used to be the fiscal financial reimbursement for a successful juvenile diversion. We got the legislature to increase that to $750. I think you're going to see a real monetary return increase on that next year. And there's people in the room that had a lot to do with that, and we're thankful for them. Adult diversion, we're giving it a try. It's difficult. 86 adults assisted. A lot of these were drug cases. 53 completed. That's still like 60%. That's still really good. 24 in progress. Whereas that juvenile diversion is statutorily mandated, I do know this adult diversion is not, but still, it's something worth trying when we can do something to help people stay out of the criminal justice system, and we're proud of those efforts. Mr. Witcher did a fantastic job talking about attorney recruitment and retention. I want to add to that just a little bit. One of my biggest struggles when I came into the state's attorney's office 1 year ago was attorney shortage. I was 7 down. And when you have 27 attorneys and you're 7 down, that's a significant number. And it was primarily due to the fact that, in my opinion, we were between $8 and $12 short per hour in attorney wages. This discrepancy has posed a huge challenge in attracting and retaining experienced attorneys, especially. I had the privilege to serve on the wage committee, and it was a challenge. That was a very, very difficult task that you put to us, to put together a wage scale, to to give that big job to people. Well, thank goodness we had Carol Bancroft, who had tremendous experience in this regard, and she walked us all through it. And believe me, we put her to the task of making sure that we all understood. And I was really thrilled to see at the end that I was proved right, that our attorneys were $10 short on starting wage, that I was proved correct in that regard. I encourage you to adopt the wage scale. I think what it shows is that the majority of our Pennington County employees are paid fairly. And I think what it shows is that there's some that are not. And my concern is for those that are not. And most significantly for the state's attorney's office, it's the attorneys. And we cannot have a safe community and fight crime. We can have the best law enforcement officers making the best arrests and following every law and order initiative that we would want for our community. But if you don't have prosecutors to prosecute those cases and you don't have defenders to defend those people, all of those efforts fall short. I'd also point out that, our attorneys at the state's attorney's office, coupled with the challenges of the finances, are faced with crippling caseloads. And that's why I encourage you, on top of that consideration for the wages, I'm going to double down on my request for the 2 new attorneys. Our caseloads are really beyond compare. When you look at our competitors, the Attorney General's office, the United States attorneys, the city attorney's office, we're double and triple the caseload of what they're doing. The comparison is just unfair. What we're expecting those prosecutors to do, they just can't do it. They just can't do it. I just had Alex Weiss resign. I just can't keep anybody. I just can't keep them. It's been overwhelming for too long. So here's my budget. I am requesting in wages. The majority of my budget is in people. My increase here is representative of the implementation of the new wage scale. Increase is 6.9%. My FTE request is for the 2 criminal attorneys, 1 high end, to cover the creation of the major crimes unit. So this person will go into general felonies to pick up the slack of the felony caseload that is peeled off to support those major crimes attorneys. And then at the low end in misdemeanors to support my retail theft initiative. And then 1 victim advocate, which I have applied for grant funding for. This is to the tune of $265,652. On the operations line, $1,463,692. That number represents a decrease for the second year in a row this year of 8.74% with no new programs or expenditures. I have gone through operations with a fine-tooth comb. I want new programs. I would love to have some of the things that would make my job in life easier. I'm not asking for them in the hope that you will take my other requests for FTE very seriously. I'm extremely fiscally responsible. My witness budget that I share with Mr. Witcher, I completely understand his request. What he is telling you regarding our capital cases is absolutely true. We have 2 cases in the state's attorney's office that could be capital cases. I will provide notice of death penalty as soon as those decisions are made. We're actively communicating with Mr. Witcher's office about those difficult decisions. That is the Julie Fisk homicide. It was a case at Rapid Valley and the public homicide of Esther Wolf. Both of those are very high profile and probably known to the commission. I'm not asking for an increase in my contribution to our shared witness budget, leaving the amount at $125,000. If I declare the death penalty in either of those cases, I will come back to the commission and ask for a supplement to the budget. That's the way I'm choosing to approach that. My revenue is down 10%. I've detailed that in this slide. It has everything to do with decreases in the federal government's contribution or willingness to give to victim services, the state's willingness to give to victim services. But it's the upside or the positive is that our state diversion incentive money was up 33%. So the overall decrease in revenue was 10%. Overall budget summary for you, 2025 proposed budget, $7,860,292. As opposed to my 2024 budget, $7,590,228, with a $270,064 difference, which is only a 4.1% increase in the state's attorney's office budget. I would also point out to you that my underspent revenue in 2024 was $1 million that I sent back to the general fund. Again, proving that I am extremely responsible with money that you give to me, down to the penny. Lastly, just letting you know again, in 2025, we'll be focusing on victims. The good use of 2 new lawyers. I am hoping to be forming a community advisory council to make sure the state's attorney's office is serving the community in the best way possible. And as always, looking for transparency in my service and considering at the bequest of Katie Urban launching a podcast that would also contribute to transparency and giving a window into our work at the state's attorney's office. So with that, I would stand for questions from the
Mr.
commission.
Chair.
Mr. Roskinek.
So Laura, does that increase of 411,377 under personal services include your requested employees? Just so I understand that.
Ask me that one more time so I can get with you here.
Under total personal services, 411,377. That's under State's Attorney 151.
Commissioners, it does not. No new FTEs have been included in any of the budgets
Okay,
presented.
that was my question. And then do you see that being a trend with the decrease in grants?
Yes, unfortunately, Commissioner, I do see a decrease in grants. I also am grateful for our grant officer, and we are also applying for more grants. So I'm hopeful that as we continue to apply, we may have more opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Ms. Hadcock.
So I'm seeing your grand total is $7,860,292, and that's without the FTs.
Correct.
Okay, so then you got to add a 265 something for your FTEs, and then another 250. Basically, onto that 7,860,292, you need to add another 515,000 to add the 250 from the witness, 131. I'm sorry, 131, and state's attorney 151. So 151 would be your state's attorney budget would be 265. And your 131 would be $250,000 more. So you're,
I think what Deb's saying, the 7,860,292, then you add 265,
and 250.
652, and then you add 250, that comes up to $8,375,944.
With a $515,000 increase.
But she didn't ask to increase her witness. She's keeping it at 125.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Hadcock, I understand the question. The witness budget is included in the total proposed 25 budget.
So the 7,860,292 has the 250 increase in it or not? Because what you have there is you have 510, but you went from 260 to 24 to 510 in 25, which is a $250,000 increase.
The only increase that the state's attorney is asking for are the FTEs, which are not in the proposed 7.8 million.
Okay, so in the 7.8, you have the 510, or do you have the 260? Are you, because the 510 is adding the $250,000 more. From 24 to 25, you're adding $250,000 more. So you have the 7,860,292, you have it at 510. She has that under 510,000.
Mr. Chair, I think I understand. You're talking about the witness budget, right? Is that what you're talking about, Commissioner
Yes,
Hancock?
is it in the 7,860,292 at 510,000?
If I understand the presentation, only 125,000 from that budget is actually in her budget, and it's in that $7,860,000. The rest of it is in Eric Witcher's budget for the PDO. But since it's all in the same account, it has to be shown to us. But she just explained 125,000 of it is in her budget, and he has to absorb whatever the difference of that is. Is that
The
correct?
That's correct.
I see two heads nodding, so I just want to make sure I understood what you were asking after some of the numbers flew a couple of times,
So
so.
with the two attorneys and the victim advocates, whatever, advocacy, I can't say it today, is 265,000.
Yes.
You're not adding anything, or you are adding the 125?
The only thing we are adding are the FTEs, the 265.
Okay, so you're having 7,860,292 plus the 265.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
And as typically what happens after budgets, Holly will come up with all the requests and we'll get them laid out where the fund, like one victim advocacy would be funded by a grant, all that would come to the commission, so we'd be able to review it. Mr. Flores.
So, good presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I thought it was interesting that in your notes to us that you pointed out what is statutorily mandated. And as we go through that and look, we can see that, it's like all the other services that the county basically provides. Nearly 90% of all of our services are mandated, either statutorily or constitutionally. The one area that you pointed out on the adult diversion program, which you've had good success and which, in my opinion, saves us money overall because of the program and the way it's run. So congratulations on that. And I would also like to congratulate you on the juvenile diversion program with your high percentage of success on that. And fortunately, the legislature has stepped up to the plate, as you pointed out, to increase that amount on those from $250 to $750. And I know that we weren't able to do it for the $250, but at the same time, that's a big bonus. And again, it's a very successful program. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. That has everything to do with Kim Warshing and our team.
Any further questions for Laura?
Good presentation, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Laura.
you.
Appreciate it. With the commission, at 4 o'clock, we want to try and be on time for the court systems. Right now, we have law enforcement coming up. Does the commission want to take a short break before Brian comes up? I'd look to take,
Move to take a 10-minute break.
moved by Rosknecht, seconded by Hancock. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, we're live, and I'll give the floor to Sheriff Brian Mueller.
Well, good afternoon again. Brian Mueller, Pennington County Sheriff. Very happy to be in front of you again, and very happy to be going after Laura Retzel in her presentation again. She does such a good job And I know last year, as the new state's attorney, she stood up and said, no increases, mic drop, walked off, so I'm glad she asked for a couple of things, make mine a little less painful for you, so. I just want to start off this presentation and just go over a little bit of crime data here in Rapid City and Pennington County and give you a snapshot of the kind of the state of the world that we're in here. This first slide, as you know, last year we started releasing quarterly crime data, and I do it in two batches. The first batch always contains all of Pennington County, which is Rapid City and Box Elder statistics included. And the second slide that I'll show you is Pennington County only, so it excludes the municipalities. So, and as State's Attorney Retzel said earlier, you know, a lot of our crime trends have continued to drop since COVID when they hit all-time highs. But you look at last year's 2023 homicide number of 7, and I think we'd all agree that's not a number that we're happy with. So we still have a lot of work to do. And as she talked about too, with the theft task force that she stood up in her office working with the police department, you can see that the theft numbers from 21, 22, and 23 have continued to go up across Pennington County, and a big part of those numbers on this slide are from Rapid City. When you look at the Pennington County data, we have the sexual assaults, ag assault, burglary, stolen vehicles on this slide, and homicide and robbery also. So this is the last 3 years of Pennington County only data. And then had an opportunity this morning to take a look at our first half statistics compared 2024 to 2023. And our sexual assaults are down in Pennington County. Our ag assaults are up just a little bit. Burglary, stolen vehicles, and homicide and robbery are even in Pennington County, excluding Rapid City and Box Elder. And then also of note, our overdoses, our fatal overdoses are down, and thefts all across the board are down. And I do think there's a direct correlation to the thefts in Pennington County decreasing to the extra work that Laura and her staff in her office are taking on those cases. So we're very appreciative to have such good partners here in Pennington County working on these issues together. The next few slides are going to break down just some specific areas of the law enforcement division that we're working on. As I've talked to you about in the past, this last 2 years, we put a big emphasis on increasing our proactivity on the law enforcement side. So you can see across the board what our statistics of the last 3 years have looked like. And again, I looked at the first half of 2024 compared to 2023 statistics this morning. And I can tell you that our calls for service are up 9% from last year. Our arrests are up 6%. Our traffic stops are up 17%. Our citations are up 29%. Our DUI arrests are up 3%. And directly correlated, our accidents have dropped 15% in Pennington County. And I think that's attributed to the good work that we're out there doing day in and day out. I'm not going to talk a lot about these next couple of slides, just providing you some data for your packets on our warrants division. Our coroner calls the last couple of years have decreased a little bit. And when I get to the budget part, I'm going to talk about our expenses related to the coroner's office that continue to go up, the things that are not directly related to our office. And I'll talk to you about that when we get into the law enforcement budget itself. Our Unified Narcotics Enforcement Team, joint team with the Rapid City Police Department, South Dakota DCI, the Pennington County Sheriff's Office, and our federal partners, they've been doing some really good work over the last several years. And as you can see, the last 3 years, their proactivity has continued to increase. Methamphetamine arrests have gone down the last 2 years just a little bit, but also at the same time, our fentanyl arrests have continued to increase. So it's just a trend that we're seeing. That trend is occurring in other parts of the country too. It's not unique to Rapid City. And I would tell you, although our meth arrests have declined, meth continues to be the #1 driver of our violent crime here in Pennington County. So that problem is not in our rearview mirror, something that we're out there working hard on every day. Just a little bit of data here. We continue to do more search warrants. seize more firearms. Our cash seizures have dropped just a little bit the last 2 years. And then I'm just going to walk through some statistics in our other divisions. The Care Campus, as you know, is a joint venture between Rapid City and Pennington County. We cost share the programs that go on in that facility. As you can see, our Safe Solutions numbers has declined just a little bit, and our detox utilization has gone up. Our residential treatment has gone up also. When I look at the first half of this year compared to last year, our safe beds have decreased 8% this year. Our detox beds have increased 6%, and our residential treatment services have increased 42%. And that's not an accident. That's something that we've been working very closely together with the police department, with Barry Tice at Human Services, and our other partners in the community. We've been actually decreasing some of the number of safe beds incrementally. We made a small decrease last week, and we're continuing to motivate people to move into detox beds to receive more treatment opportunities to change their trajectory. As you know, that we've also been looking for more cultural partners, and Gene Tyon in the OLO group has stepped forward, and they've been spent a few days with their group in assessing the clients that we have in our safe beds and our detox beds, and are working on some new solutions that we'll be bringing forward to you here shortly that might be able to help that population. These are our Pennington County jail numbers over the last 3 years, intakes and releases, and our average daily population. When I'm looking at the first half of this year compared to last year, our intakes are up 12%, and our average daily population is up 4%. And a lot of that is related to the programming that State's Attorney Retzel talked about, looking at increased sentences for mid-level crimes, theft, and those types of things. We've been running 5 or 6 individuals sentenced in custody 2 to 3 years ago, and this year we're averaging close to 25. So we're holding some more people in custody a little bit longer on the front end in hopes that it'll change their behavior out there in the community. I just put this up there to talk a little bit about our community work program that we're doing. And remind you that inside the jail, we do the work equivalent of about 67 full-time employees with inmate labor. So that's inmates working in the kitchen, working in laundry, and doing janitorial services throughout the facility. And we do the community work program, which we've done for a number of years, and you'll see the people walking around the campus with the sheriff's work program vests on, cleaning up things. But as you know, you guys worked along with Rapid City last year to partner together with the Ignite work program. We actually kicked that off officially last week. State's Attorney Retzel is meeting with the public defender and the judge later this week to talk about getting that sentencing option in front of the courts next week. And we should be ramping that number up with hopes to move into those 17 beds at the Care Campus by August. So we'll continue to keep you updated on that. And I'm hoping that we can offset some of the rising costs that Buildings and Grounds has with taking on some of these new properties by utilizing this inmate labor. And also talked to Joe out at County Highway about using this inmate labor to clean up some of our ditches, drainage areas, and also with John and Ron out at Central States Fair to utilize them for some of their maintenance on that facility. This next slide is our Western Juvenile Services Center. It just shows our utilization over the last 3 years with our partners, and then our average length of stay. As you know, we kind of hit a little bit of a budget crisis out there during COVID when our federal numbers went from in the 20s down to 2, 3, 4, and we took a several $100,000 hit in revenue. That's bounced back up again. The first half of this year, our intakes are up 10%. Our ADP is up 15%, and a big part of that is, as you can see, the increased number of Bureau of Prison detainees that we're holding out there, and their length of stay is getting longer. They're Their cases are pretty complex. They're taking a little bit more time in the system, and we're seeing those numbers rebound back, which, when we get to the budget aspect, you'll see it's a pretty big benefit to Pennington County. This slide just illustrates our partnership with Lutheran Social Services. They run the Arise Center out there, just shows some statistics as to who they're housing in their facilities. It's a good cost-saving measures for Pennington County and also for our neighboring counties. You know, we couldn't do the work that we do at the sheriff's office without our volunteers. We have over 150 volunteers that work with us on a routine basis. You're probably most familiar with search and rescue, our Explorer program. We have a number of volunteers that work in our facilities in the jail, the juvenile center, and the care campus. We have a senior volunteer program, and combined together, they provide hundreds of hours of service to Pennington County. In a lot of these areas, if we didn't get the volunteers to perform those services, we'd have full-time employees doing some of this work, specifically what search and rescue is able to do for us for very little financial investment from Pennington County. I just wanted to take just a minute to mention the wellness program. And in your packets that I gave you, I went into great detail with each one of the budgets as to what our mandated services are and what some of our non-mandated services are. This is just one of the non-mandated services that I wanted to highlight. And, you know, although it's not mandated, it's really become a standard for law enforcement agencies across the country to implement a wellness program. I'm really proud of the work that Corey Brubachen did helping us stand that up. He's now the jail commander. He's probably going to need that service now that he's in that role, but very appreciative that he helped us stand that up. And Robin McCool-Denicky is now taken over as the wellness coordinator for that program, and I just think it's really important that we work hard to take care of those who take care of us and keep us safe in our community. That's something that we want to continue making a priority. Now I'm going to do about 2 hours on the budget. You going to need another break?
You might want to get another water.
This first slide is just an overview of the FTEs under the sheriff's office. You'll see this year in 2024, we have 451. We actually have 452 employees now. You guys approved us moving Jennifer, the grant writer from the auditor's office, to the sheriff's office earlier this year. That's the only increase that's reflected in our budget. And we moved that FTE and the funding from the auditor's office, so there's not an increase in either in our budgets. And the other thing that I'll point out and I'll talk about in detail when we get to the individual budgets, but we did move 6 full-time employees from the jail budget to the care campus budget, and that's part of our Ignite work program. When we moved that over there, I wanted to separate that out of the jail budget and put it in the care campus budget where it's going to be housed. And that'll allow Rapid City to help cost share that moving into the future. Now on to the good stuff. So these are all the different budgets that we manage under the sheriff's office. Law enforcement, the jail, our juvenile services center, the care campus, search and rescue, pivot point, and 24/7. And when you look down, when you look at this form that we created, it shows what the tax support is. So it shows the 2024 expenditures, the 2025 expenditures, and then the revenues for each one of those years, the total tax support, and then the far right column is the dollar difference in the tax support for this year for the requests in the budget. And I'm going to go through most of these budgets, not all of them. I'm not going to go through the search and rescue budget. You're very familiar with that. I'm not requesting any changes to that budget. The pivot point budget actually decreased a little bit. That's a partnership that we have. And that budget's gone down just a little bit. I'm not going to go over any detail on that. And the 24/7 budgets remain neutral. Last year, as you know, is the first year that we put general fund dollars towards 24/7. And we've kind of got that stabilized off, and we're hoping this year through legislation to increase some of the user fees and hopefully get that number back down closer to 0 again. But we've been maintaining with the close to $80,000 that you let us put into that budget last year. This is the law enforcement budget. And you can flip back and forth as you want to, just to see the comparisons. But I just wanted to give a breakdown of what the increases are in each one of these budgets. I'm going to talk through what the salary impact is. And specifically, as you know, I didn't add any FTEs. 100% of the salary increases that are listed in this presentation are related to moving on to the new wage scale. And when we get to the end of talking about the budgets, I'm going to break down a few specific positions that we have and show you where they are today and why it's important that we get them moved on to the new wage scale. So law enforcement, a majority of the increase was with the wage study implementation. Our operations increased $26,000. And you talked a little bit earlier, I heard you ask the auditor on how what are some of the contributing factors to the decline in our reserve. And I'd tell you, it had a pretty big impact. The 2 or 3 years we did a zero operational mandate to all the departments at budget time. And with a lot of the costs that have continued to go up, we were able to absorb that for a short period of time. But we're kind of at the end of that tipping point and needing to put some of those increase back in unless we reduce services someplace. So on the operational increase, it's only $26,000, but a lot of that is related to the autopsy, morgue, and hazmat costs related to the coroner's office. And then in each one of these budgets, you'll see travel costs listed. And if any of you have traveled in the last year or two, you know the cost of airline, the cost of hotels have gone up quite a bit. And we work hard to try to mitigate that wherever we can. You know, we're not taking extravagant trips, but when we send people to training and conferences, and then a big part of our expense into the jail budget with travel is related to our trippies costs when we send 3 people out of town overnight twice a week for that bus trip to Sioux Falls. And then we had a little bit of decrease related to the auditor's office wanted us to remove the COPS micro grant out of the budget because we won't find out until September or October for sure if we receive that. If we do receive that micro grant, we'll be back in front of the commission to discuss the grant and ask for authorization to put that back in the budget. But it should be a cost neutral impact if we get it. In the jail budget, we moved, like I explained earlier, the 6 full-time employees from the jail to the care campus for the Ignite program. After that move, which took a lot of wages with it, our salary increase related to the wage study is about $83,000 at the jail. And our operational increase is about $63,000. Mostly related, in all of our facilities, most of our operational increase is related to food service costs. Does anybody remember about how many meals we serve a year? A little over 900,000. So when we do a 5% increase per year that we negotiate, you know, somewhere between 3 and 5%. Last year, they tried to give us an 18% increase on our meal costs. We fought it for 4 months. Chief Deputy Hughes had good negotiating skills. We got that back down to, I think, 3%, and we're looking at potentially a 5% increase next year. So in the jail, our care campus, and the juvenile center, there's most of the increase is related to a 5% increase in our food costs, but that's a lot of meals. It's more than they serve at Monument Health in the hospital services. And then, another big one that contributes to where we're sitting with our reserves is the fact our local inmate population continues to go up, and as a result, we've got to kick out U.S. Marshal inmates. And I think it's important as a sheriff that we're able to do that, because when cops get somebody arrested in the back of the car, the last thing they need to be worrying about is whether they have a place to take them or not. That's our job to sort that out, but it's expensive business. And each 50 marshals that we have to kick out of the jail costs Pennington County about $2 million. And I'd tell you, 3 years ago, we were running about 240 U.S. Marshals in custody. And today is not a good example because they just took a big trip out, but we've been running about 115 to 120, 125 in custody. So if you do the math, you can tell that that's had a pretty big financial impact on Pennington County over the last couple of years.
Sure.
Mr.
Brian, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Relative to state prisoners, are you still holding a lot of state prisoners at the facility?
We are. We're running about close to 100 inmates a day in custody that have probation-related charges. About 40 of those are probation-only holds, and we're running 45 to 55 State Department of Corrections inmates on parole that are being held on parole hold. So that's also something that I've met with State's Attorney Retzel on, trying to figure out a way for Pennington County to work with our partners to prioritize those cases so they're not sitting on our dime and our expense for weeks and months at a time till parole or probation figures out what they're going to do with them. So it's complicated business, but she's rolled her sleeves up and dove into it with her staff as recently as last week. So we're hoping to get some relief on those.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lassiter.
Brian, just out of curiosity, with that decrease in the marshals, is that because we are having to hold more inmates from locally because we have individuals with all this, some of this crime stuff, or is it they're backing off on the amount of inmates that are sending our way?
A little bit of both. I'd tell you, we're still running at 100% capacity, so we couldn't take a lot more even if we wanted to right now. But a big part of that is our local numbers have gone up substantially the last couple of years.
So we just don't have the capacity to bring more in.
Correct. And
Thanks.
and then, you know, on the national level too, our jail commander and chief deputies have been working with the marshal services here in the state. They've been shipping marshal inmates all over the region. And they're down a little bit too. They had some judge turnover, and they have a judge that's a little more efficient than the one that they had in there previously, and going through cases at a quicker pace. But I do imagine that's going to rebound again. And if we can figure out a way to process cases a little bit quicker through the system to reduce our local inmate population, I'd hope to be able to bring some more federal inmates back in and backfill that and get that revenue back up if we're able to. And then again, obviously, this jail expansion that we've all been working on for the last 3 years will be a key part of that process. The Juvenile Services Center. This was a good news budget. We're able to decrease Pennington County's tax support by about $209,000. There's an increase to salaries of about $60,000 as a result of the wage study, an operational increase of about $154,000, and most of that is Lutheran Social Services at Arise have continued to have to do some of the same things Pennington County's doing to stay competitive wage-wise, have to raise their wages. So they pass that cost on to us, running that contract for us out there. So that's a big part of our operational increase. But when you get to the bottom, you can see that with the fact that our Federal Bureau of Prison numbers continue to increase and hold steady, that we're able to increase that revenue by a little over $400,000, offsetting a lot, you know, all of the wage study implementation or operational increase, and then giving Pennington County a little bit of a break. In the care campus again, another good news story in the budget this year, reducing Pennington County tax support by just over $500,000 at the care campus. And that's on top of even moving the 6 employees from the jail over to the care campus budget. So we have a salary increase of just over $500,000. A majority of that are the 6 FTEs that we moved, probably close to 400,000 of that are the FTEs that we moved. The rest is the wage study implementation. We do have some operational increase, mostly meals over there. They run just about twice the capacity that we run at our Juvenile Services Center. So I think today we're running 83 clients over there at the care campus. So the meal cost is a real deal for us. But our staff, our clinical supervisors have worked really hard with the state the last couple of years. I felt that a lot of the services that we're providing that we get reimbursements from the state were costing us way more money than we were getting reimbursed. And they helped us through the course of last year and this year, work hard to get our rate reimbursement where it needs to be. And you can see as a result here, Pennington County is going to increase revenue, close to $1 million next year from that contract. So we're going to pass a little bit of that savings on to Rapid City, but most of it on to Pennington County as, Rapid City is 80+% utilization of the care campus. So we're going to get that split a little bit closer to where it needs to be. Then I want to take just a minute and talk through the importance of this wage study. And I know at the end of tomorrow, you guys are going to feel like we've given you an impossible task when we were asking for these additional wages. Some departments are short FTEs that, maybe they haven't asked for the last couple of years. And we're going to do what we can do to try to offset that. But, we're in difficult business that we're serving people with people. And those people are our employees. And for a sheriff who employs over 450 people, I can't emphasize enough how important it is that we can keep our wages competitive and what we're up against in that market. And I know that it can be frustrating at times when you look at it when we're continuing to bring these requests back in. And there doesn't seem to be the money there to be able to do some of the things we need to do. I understand that frustration. I feel it myself. But when we look at what these other entities are doing out there to remain competitive, and I'm telling you, these are our main competitors that we're losing employees to, we have to do something where we can to keep up. And I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of what that looked like today. And if you get an opportunity to look through the wage study on an individual basis, you're going to see, some of these people get a $2-3 an hour raise. And that seems like it's off the chart and it's something that shouldn't happen. But in reality, when we're able to do our own wage study, provide real information as to who our competitors are and tell you where we're sitting today, and then I'll tell you what some of the results are of being $4-5 behind our competitors. So right now, our deputies start at $27.41. And you can look and see what our competitors' wages are at the bottom of this sheet. And these aren't made up numbers, these are real numbers, but this is what these individuals are getting paid today. Rapid Cities just took effect July 1st, but I believe if not all of these, a majority of these are looking at a 3 to 4% increase on top of that for next year. So without doing some type of a drastic increase, our deputies are $5 an hour behind, the people that we're working side by side with in the same building. And our proposed deputy starting pay with the new scale is $29.60. And I'd show you that to say that's a significant increase, but we're not being greedy. And at the end of the day, we still have some work to do to make up to get that to be competitive. But we realize there's a limited amount of money that we all have to work with. So we'd like to do it incrementally, but it's definitely having a major impact on our office. And frankly, we haven't lost a lot of staff in the deputy ranks this last year. We lost 2 to the police department, and I have 2 that are in background investigation, looking at going to the DCI. But if we don't do something, we've just been telling them we're working on this wage study, and they're hopeful. And if we don't do something, I don't know what that's going to look like for us in the future, because I think it's pretty tough in this line of work to convince your family that this is a line of work you should be in the first place, let alone to do it for $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 less than people doing the same work in the same community. So that's just one of the things I wanted to show you. Here's a few more of the ones that when you look through are going to be a little bit of an adjustment. And I wanted to thank you all for helping us with the mid-year non-budgeted raises we did for law enforcement, corrections, and our detox tech staff last year. Because had we not done that, we'd have really, really been behind the curve. Last year, we were able to move our correctional officers to 2553, which was close to the highest paid corrections in the state. We did not move them to the same area law enforcement was, just because we have so many of them that financially we can't do that. And there was a time 3 or 4 years ago that we paid our correction staff the same as we did our deputies, but with the fact that our competitors in the region have spiked law enforcement wages, that's something we just haven't been able to sustain. But we're going to need to continue to work to keep some parity in that, because 2689 with our correction staff, although it puts them close to the top for pay and corrections in the state, we're not losing our correction staff to other correction agencies. The Department of Corrections is not stealing our staff. Minnehaha County, Lincoln, our neighboring counties are not stealing our staff. Our law enforcement agencies are heavily recruiting our correction staff. In the last year and a half, we've lost 3 correctional officers to Box Elder Police Department, 2 to the Highway Patrol, 2 to the Rapid City Police Department, 1 to Day County, 1 to Perkins County. Part of that is we're hiring such high quality people and they're super service driven. But when they're making $25 an hour and they can literally get a $6 or $7 an hour raise starting to go to law enforcement, that's going to be a trend that we're going to continue to see. And last year, you allowed me to add 5 additional correction staff to the jail budget in hopes to be able to open up Jail South. But with our attrition rates, we haven't been able to get that staff hired up. So when we get to the point where we have more room in the jail, it's a real concern to me and our command staff, especially at the jail, that we have the staff there that's available to staff, the cells that we do have. So that's a real challenge and just something to keep in our mind when we're working through this. A couple of other positions I just wanted to point out. You can see there, we're paying people $15, $18 an hour. My son is 17 years old, working a summer job, making $20.50. It's pretty tough to convince somebody to come work for $15, $16, $17 an hour in this market. So these might seem like big adjustments when you're looking at them on the wage sheets, but at the end of the day, is making $18 unreasonable, making $20 unreasonable for the type of work that we're asking these people to do? I'd say it definitely is not. And I know you're going to hear more from Davis related to the building service folks on there, how appreciative he is of the increases that this new wage scale would do for his help too. So these are just a few examples of some of the bigger jumps on their wage scale, but the necessity as to why we need to do that. It's almost impossible to fill a position at $15, $16 an hour. I'm going to give you 2 more examples when I open up to questions. This next one is our medical staff, our registered nurses at the jail. And we have paramedics, EMTs, LPNs, and registered nurses, clinical, our certified nurse practitioners that work over at the jail. I just wanted to show you one of these and show you what we're up against in the market. And we're not trying to be greedy and get ourselves ahead of the market in the area, but when our competitors specifically for nurses mostly are in the private sector, but I put the state wages up there just to give you an idea. We're proposing the RNs move to $33.15 an hour. They don't get any different benefits than any other county employees do, and you know what those are. But the state is a little bit lower than that, but they give a $5 an hour night differential, $1.50 for weekend differential, a $5,000 sign-on bonus, and free premium employee health insurance. And you know what that adds up to real money pretty quickly. But a majority of our competition with medical staff is with Monument Health, and you'll see what their rates are. Their sign-on bonuses of $5,000 to $40,000. They're paying tuition reimbursement and giving education allowance. Lawrence County just hired a new RN at $35.75. I'd tell you our medical is probably one of the highest liability areas in their correctional facilities and the care campus that we have for Pennington County. And they do phenomenal work. We did a comparison, I think I brought it to you last year, at budget time between Minnehaha and Pennington County Corrections. And I've had people say, hey, you spend a lot of time trying to hire correctional staff. Why don't you just contract for it? Minnehaha Sheriff's Office contracts for their medical staff in their facility. And their facility is just a little bit smaller than ours, to give you a comparison. And we do our medical for about $1.5 million less than what Minnehaha pays to do a contract. So trying to pay our staff just a little bit more to be able to retain them is a big deal for us. And also, those cost savings don't reflect the amount of inmates and detainees and clients that we're able to serve in-house and not send down to the hospital and pick up a hospital bill on top of that. That's just the personnel cost savings. Just to give you an idea where we're at for openings, we have 2 deputy openings right now, 15 correction openings, 3 nurse openings, 4 counselor openings. So these positions that we're talking about are positions that we are losing to these other entities, and we are struggling to recruit. The last one I'm going to discuss really quick is the addiction counselor trainee at the Juvenile Services Center. And we have 3 levels of counselors out there. Again, I'm just talking about one. This is the lowest level, entry-level counselor position. This position does not require a bachelor's degree. The other ones do. So we're currently hiring these people at $18 an hour. And in their first 5 years, they have to complete coursework equivalent to getting a college degree. Many of these people are making $18, $19 an hour, trying to go to school and pay for that, and raising a family. This is not like a high school kid making $18, not paying any expenses at home too. And the trainee, the counselor world, as far as education goes, is turning out less and less addiction counselors in our region right now, which is really putting a pinch on us trying to recruit these people that have a real passion to be able to come in and do this work, but just are not willing to do it for $18 an hour. So this wage increase, wage scale does have a little bit of an increase for each one of our counselor positions. And as I showed you with the budget earlier, you know, we're looking at potentially increasing Pennington County's revenue by $1 million. And a majority of that is through counseling services that we're providing. So if we're not able to hire these counselors in, we're not able to provide that service and create that revenue. But more important to me, we're also not able to provide that level of counseling to the individuals that need it. If any of you have had family or friends that have struggled with addiction and tried to get them into a treatment facility anywhere in this part of the country, it's weeks or months out. So being able to keep our counselors close to fully staffed so we can provide that service locally in our community is a win-win, both on the revenue side and on the service side for Pennington County. Just real quick, I just wanted to thank you again for the Ignite support that you provided last year when we kicked that initiative off. And I hope to be able to share some really good news with you as the courts continues to roll that as a sentencing option in the next couple of weeks, that we can increase that up and hopefully save some money for Pennington County, but more importantly, take some of these low and mid-level offenders and provide a little better foundation for them so when they leave our facility, they're not coming back in and reoffending in our community. You know, our goal really is to set them up with some basic job skills, some basic life skills, and good employment, and hope that they can use that as a starting point to make better choices in their life. So without initiatives like that, I don't think we'll build a jail big enough in the future to be able to do what we need to do here. So those are just the little things we're doing on the side to try to slow down, you know, our need to have that new jail bed space today. The jail infrastructure and capacity, that's a work in progress. We're getting some really good numbers right now. I don't know that the numbers are really good, but they're, I think, really accurate numbers. And we're going to have some work to do together with the commission and our team here in the near future to try to figure out what path we're going to take forward, how many jail beds we want to add to Pennington County, and what that's going to look like for us in our future. So just getting those numbers together. I've been working with the auditor on some potential paths forward that we can present to you. So we should be hearing from us probably next week when these meetings get over. We're going to need to start having some discussions and making some decisions related to that jail project. And then again, just to encourage you to help us do as much as we can with this wage study implementation. As you've seen, when you look through the list, you're going to see a lot of the employees in Pennington County are getting very small raises. And the ones that are far behind, as you can see from my presentation today, are ones that we really need to give some attention to and try to get them in the right spot so we can retain them. And I think that's all I have. Stand for any questions.
Thanks, Brian. Is there any
Chair.
questions? Ms. Hadcock?
So on the wage implementation, how much was that to your overall costs? How much did that add, just in wages?
The whole wage implementation was 1.248
Okay,
million, roughly.
thank you. Why I say that is, we started the wage scale in June 23. We're not going to implement it in 24, we're going to implement it in 25. Everybody knew this was coming. Everybody knew in every department that it was coming. Last year, we had an $800,000 increase in wage study, or comparables and market analysis is what we called it. Now we want to add another 2.2 to that. And again, budgets are going up. Nobody's cutting. And we've added a wage study. So, again, we all knew this was coming. We knew it over a year ago, but no one cut. We're at, what, $6 million at this point on overages, and that includes wage study that was added to these budgets. So for me, that's kind of disappointing when people knew that this was coming. I knew there would be some increases. I mean, that's common sense. But you got to cut to add. And if you keep adding, we just had a huge issue with the citizens of this state saying, cut your budgets, city, counties, and schools, because our property taxes are skyrocketed. But yet we decided maybe to add about 6 million this year. Last year was 9. I didn't want to agree with it last year because of that increase, because there was a lot of stuff I think we didn't need. I know we're mandated, but we're not mandated to have so many employees. We're not mandated to have so much of the stuff that we think we need in Pennington County. We're mandated to have those services. Even your department has grown in the last 2 years, 16 and a half FTEs.
Correct.
That's a lot of FTEs. That's a lot that we're saying that we need, and the citizens are saying, how much do you really need and how much can we afford? And we say, heck, we'll figure it out later. Last year we did it, and this year we're going to do it, looks like again. Again, where are you cutting? Where are we cutting to find out? Because people say we cut, we get less services. I don't think that's true, because our population and our growth is not matching Pennington County. Our growth has been huge. Between our buildings, now our wages, which we have to keep up with, we just did. Department heads, elected officials, we have to do, is what we're saying, as department heads, we have to do these frontline workers now, and I totally understand that, and I want to do that, but you got to cut some of your budgets to do that. You knew that since June last year, but you kept adding 800 last year, and now another $2.3 million to do a wage study, wage comparables, market analysis. That's combined both the Gallagher and the Condra study together on those totals.
Are you talking to me specifically, or?
Nope.
Okay.
You're part of the wage scale.
Yeah.
You were part of knowing ahead of time that this was what it was going to cost and what it was going to cost your department. So I'm not just speaking to you, Brian. I'm speaking to everybody in those 17 departments when all these wage increases were happening last year, and now they're going to happen this year. And now it's the frontline workers that are going to be affected by it. So I'm disappointed that we all knew it was coming, but we still added to our budgets, and we didn't decrease anything.
Chairman?
Yeah,
may I
the floor,
respond?
Brian.
So I just want to refer you back to our 2025 budget request. The overall wage increase is 1.248 million for all of our budgets together. And as you can see, the tax support increase that I'm requesting is $832,000. So it's about a 3.53% increase, and it is an increase. And $800,000 is a lot of money.
So is the 211 at,
Brian
four-
has the floor,
I'm sorry.
But,
please.
so I'm just
Thought he was
explaining to
done.
you that we're helping solve the issue, but our budget last year, even with reducing the jail revenue by $500,000, we're able to go out and find new revenue at the Juvenile Services Center. We're able to go out and find new revenue at the Care Campus. But we're generating that revenue with incredible work from incredible employees. It's the only way we're able to generate that revenue to offset some of our costs and our growth. And without our wages being competitive, I'm not going to be able to continue to come back year after year and try to bear that. And I tell you, when you look back at the last 10 years in our office and look at the numbers, the money that we've turned back, specifically related to our Bureau of Prison contract at our Juvenile Services Center and our U.S. Marshal contract at the jail, that revenue has been in the, $6, $7, $8 million a year, 100% on the backs of our employees. So I'm happy to have a conversation if you think that I'm doing something that I shouldn't do as to where we should cut. That's what this process is for. So if you have an idea, and I can only speak for my office, but if you have an idea of services that the sheriff's office doing that you think we need to cut, let's have the discussion. That's what this process is for.
Well, and I appreciate that, Brian, but that's not my job. That's yours to figure out when you're adding, what you're adding to your budget in order to take care of your employees, you got to cut. I have to do it with mine. General public has to do it with theirs. You can't just keep adding. And where do we stop? And when do we stop? I mean, where do we stop? And we all knew ahead of time, so it's not like you didn't know it was going to be in your budgets. You had a year and a half. So you had time to prepare. We didn't start these budgets till July. We didn't get the wage study and the wage stuff done till, June? So I'm not saying our employees, nothing's wrong with our employees. Our employees are amazing. And what they do is work very hard. But I think some of the stuff that happened in between and the raises that were given in between shouldn't all been totaled, and they should be totaled in the end here. And I think people would be disappointed at the bottom line about what happened way before it. Because the wage scale is now getting implemented, and I kept hearing it the whole year of last year. And we still used it to give exceptions to wages. It wasn't your fault, because you did it up front. But unfortunately, it increased budgets, not only yours, but other people's. And now this year, we're saying we have, a 13.21% at the end of 2025. I think that's some of I truly believe between the buildings and the wages, they were huge deficits for this county and put us behind hugely. And a lot of people knew this was coming ahead of time. And this isn't directed towards you, it's just watching these budget hearings. It's crazy to me. And
It feels pretty directed towards me right now, though.
well, and you're part of it, and you were part of the wage scale and some of the stuff that went on. David Purcell, he's going to take big hits for the buildings, and this wages, big hits on the wages. So, and it increased not only yours, Brian, it increased everybody's.
Well,
So-
let's throw some ideas out for services we need to cut. I'm way open to those suggestions. I've been having community meetings for the last year in Pennington County and having this same discussion in community after community after community. And what I keep hearing is we need to be more proactive and we need to hold people more accountable. And that's the work that I've been trying to do.
So the only thing that makes the difference for the employees is the wages. It's not just wages, it's the Healthcare Trust Board and those other areas that I've been listening to, and it's not just your department, it's other departments. So when we increase some of that, and we say we give them $2 more, but then we do a Healthcare Trust Board that has to increase wages because we haven't done it for the last few years. If I did anything, my point of view is put some of that in the Healthcare Trust Board, some of this general fund.
Let's do it.
Yep, we can increase it another, million or two? Make an $8 million budget. Some of this we knew ahead of time, is all I'm saying. And I've been saying it not just today. So, and I haven't said it just to you. I've said it to our department heads. I've said it to the public, of the people that ran. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other
Brian,
questions?
is there any other questions for Brian? My only comment, Brian, is when you brought up the shortage of the counselors. You know, at one time, what they used to do is people that worked there would move their way up, and they used to help with some of the tuition for the training for the counseling. And
Right.
because you have to get your hours of internship too, and I'm sure you guys are still doing quite a bit of that to do the interns. And bring them in locally, make them good counselors too.
And glad they show up and do what they do every day. It's super important.
It is.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, Mr. Ruska.
Bitsworth, I just think public safety is paramount to the county, and we got to do what we got to do.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Next, that brings us up to the court systems. And I'll recognize Judge Robert Kozinski. Did I pronounce that right? I'm terrible at that.
No, you did perfectly well. Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Robert Gusinski. I'm one of the judges in the Seventh Circuit. I'm here with Elizabeth Hassett, who's our court administrator. And hopefully between the two of us, we'll be able to answer whatever questions you have. First of all, I do want to express my gratitude to the county commission, to the county employees, everyone who's helping us in the courthouse to make sure that our operations run smoothly, that we have the appropriate facilities to do the work that we do. And I've got to tell you, I see the folks that we work with from buildings and grounds and people that are helping us redesign some of the spaces, and they're just fantastic, and we couldn't be any happier than we are in that respect. We've submitted our budget. It's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, we are very much a reactionary type system. We are duty bound to provide services for indigent defendants, which is the majority of our budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. With respect to the court-appointed attorney's fees, we're asking for approximately a 5% increase, and that is mostly reflected by the increase in the hourly reimbursement rates for the attorneys. And then with respect to the other services, we're asking for a 15% increase. And that relates to, we're seeing more trials. We're on track to having about 50 trials this year. That last year we had 34. So our trials have gone up. We're trying more complicated cases. It requires more jurors to be called. So we have all kinds of associated expenses. And we also are seeing the need for interpreters increase substantially. So that's where the 15% comes in. That's really all I have. Otherwise, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So Judge, you say quite a bit more increase for the interpreters. I'd probably have to agree with that, but do you happen to know the percentage?
I don't know the percentage. Liz, do you?
Because I know in the past, I've heard the Hispanic community in Denver was growing quite fast, and I didn't know if that's kind of spilling over into Rapid City and the Black Hills now, or?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Liz Hassett, Court Administrator for the Seventh Circuit. Although I don't have specific languages, there's an increase between 2023 and 2024 of about 113% more interpreter requests, and we just anticipate that growing as we move forward.
Okay. Thanks for answering my question.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Liz.
Is there any other questions for the judge?
Chair,
Ms. Hadcock?
I'd just like to thank Liz. She does a great job at grants and helping people. So you keep moving around and you got a good asset. She's done a lot for different departments there, so she'll make a huge difference for you guys as well.
Well, she made me a personal promise that she's not leaving this job, and I'm going to hold her to it.
She's good at what she does, and I think a lot of the departments, we've flipped her around from different areas to different area, but she gets the job done. So you got a very competent young lady that does a good job. So thank you, Miss Liz.
Thank you, Judge, and Liz.
Thank you very much.
At this point in time, is there any public comment? Seeing none, I will reiterate that at the end of the budgets, we'll come up with a list of the requests and probably where the funding could possibly come from, and whether it's grants or whatnot for FTEs or not. That was not included in their budgets. The commissioners would please, over the tonight, look at their schedules to see, to have discussions on having a special budget meeting either on July 24th or July 18th. Those are some dates that were thrown out, so
Chair,
think about that, Ms. Hadcock.
could I ask a couple of things? Is how much did each of the departments, how much they increased their budget from the wage study? And what effect on the budget has buildings increased the budgets? Not only on the utilities, FTEs, and equipment on each department. I know Dave Purcell has done some of that, but I think that should be part of what some of the increases have done. Because that was some huge concerns of a few
Okay,
people that I
let me
was talking.
clarify that again. How much did the wage study increase everybody's budget?
Yeah, how much were increased did the wage study for each department
For each department?
cost? Thank you, Lloyd.
I just want to get this clear, because you kind of put them together, so.
You're okay, I'm just not feeling that great today. How much did each department head increase their budgets from the wage study?
Okay, from the wage study, and then the second part was,
What effect on the budget has the buildings increased the budgets in 2025 through utilities, FTEs, equipment, either for departments individually? I'm going to guess Dave Purcell was the hugest hit on that, but I'd like to know when we move into a new building and stuff, if all this has, the equipment and stuff has been affected by their budgets as well. Meaning, if they need new stuff, new computers, new anything, Holly, in their departments, or are they just transferring everything over and they're good to go?
I can answer part of that, Mr. Chair, if you would like now.
go ahead.
In the beginning, part of your budget binders, commissioners, there's a separate spreadsheet that has the concourse expenses by department.
I saw that.
That's what departments are requesting if they need additional equipment or whatnot for concourse.
Is that in their budgets is what I'm asking, or is it not? It's
Yes.
already in their budgets?
That one is,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay, so that one's satisfactory?
Yes, and I think I didn't look at Dave Purcell's yet, but is his, Miss Holly, is his, including the utilities, the 5 FTEs and all that stuff in his budget at this time?
Davis did an amazing job. He broke down his budget presentation by facility, so you have all of that information in his section.
Thank you, Miss Holly.
Okay, so reminder, look at those dates, July 24th, July 18th.
What day of the week is that, Commissioner?
I have no
July
idea.
24th is a Wednesday, July 18th is a Thursday.
I know I'm out of town July 24th.
So am I.
Okay, so we got 2 on the 24th, so that's a no. So look at July 18th on your schedules, please.
Wednesdays are good for me.
Talking about an all day?
I wouldn't think you would need all day, maybe
No.
just a morning.
Yeah, morning or evening. Yeah, I don't think we need an answer today. Kind of think about it tonight, or, well, thanks. Good for the 18th. We knew we were going to have 2 people going, so
On the 18th, I think I can make it if it's morning, yeah.
on the 18th?
Yeah.
18th. You were talking about the 24th. I'm going to be gone the 24th.
Oh,
I think Gary-
I thought you were both.
Gary
going.
and I both will be gone on the 24th.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So the 18th is the better option, at least if you want either one of us here.
18th in the morning, like 8? So it's looking, we'll confirm this tomorrow after everybody sleeps on it tonight. We're looking at 8 AM on the 18th. And it should take 3 hours, 4. If we need to reschedule another one, we could do that too. So we can get through at least to the provisional. So anything else before we adjourn, or not adjourn, but recess till tomorrow morning?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Laster.
I just want to make sure I get this overall right as far as where we're at. What I see from Cindy is what we have available is $2.5 million. That's just estimated. And I'm already seeing just basic implementation of the wage study at 3.6 million draw. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding those numbers very specific. Right? It's an increase of 3.6 million.
Without any offsetting revenues.
Gotcha.
Without it.
With offsetting revenues, it's 2.2 million, which means we only have $300,000 to play with. That's what I want to make sure.
In essence, yes.
In essence, if we're, depending on what our percentage is for our year-end reserves, but if we're going to bring them back up, since they're at 12.8, there's some stuff to play with there, but that's already a really tight budget starting off and making that point as we get ready for tomorrow and for departments to look and start thinking, well, if we want this, what is it that we can bring forward to say, maybe we don't need this? That's all I'm getting out there, because it's already a really, really tight budget.
Thanks for the clarification, Travis. Any further comments before we recess till tomorrow morning?
Move to recess.
Moved by Lassiter, seconded by Hadcock. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.